Chapter 15. Ming Ming's short black hair had turned into long, five-colored hair, extending all the way to her buttocks. Sparkling feathers glittered with five-colored light appeared on every part of her body. The center of her long hair was red, and above her forehead, there were 3 strands of red hair that were tangled together. Her arms had disappeared, and 2 five-colored wings that were 1.5 meters long appeared out of thin air. The 5-colored feathers in front of her spread out neatly, like a gorgeous armor. A colorless light shield that could not be seen behind appeared out of thin air on Ming Ming's face. From her waist, 5-colored feathers that were 2 meters long extended behind her, covering the ground behind her. A loud rooster's cry rang out, and everyone present clearly felt their spirits lift. I am the Zodiac warrior that represents the Zodiac sign of the chicken among the Zodiac guardian god. If my guess is correct, Sister Modi, your Zodiac sign should be that of the rabbit, and Yan Xiaoyi's Zodiac sign is that of the sheep. Am I right? A faint 5-colored halo circulated around Ming Ming's body. She looked like a beautiful phoenix, gently flapping her wings. At the edge of her wings, there was a layer of metallic luster. Sister Modi, before I use my Zodiac sign, my strength is indeed inferior to yours. However, after I use my Zodiac sign, you are far from being my match. As she spoke, she gently waved her right wing, and a 5-colored light floated out. It gracefully traversed the distance of 50 meters and landed on a big tree. The tree shook slightly, and with a loud bang, the top half of the tree fell to the ground. An attack of 50 meters in the air was not something that could be achieved with inner chi. Yan Xiaoyi exclaimed, Do you mean that my cousin and I are the same as you? We're also the guardian of the Zodiac? Multicolored light flashed, and Ming Ming's body was once again enveloped by the light. Like a whirlwind, it swept up the clothes that had fallen to the ground. When the light disappeared, she once again appeared in front of everyone, restoring the appearance of a young and beautiful girl. That's right. You and Big Sister Modi should be part of the Zodiac guardian deities. The horns and white hair on your head are the symbols of sheep. Big Sister Modi's extraordinary leg strength, as well as the ability of the kick formula, are far from what ordinary people can compare with. Only the rabbit of the Zodiac guardian deities has this special ability. Of course, this is only my guess. I need to verify it before I know if you are really the Zodiac guardian god. If you are, then you can blame Qiyu. He hit Yan Xiaoyi with the brick, and his own breath entered Yan Xiaoyi's body, which prompted the early awakening of the Zodiac sheep bloodline in his body. Looking at Yan Xiaoyi, Qiyu couldn't help but feel a little helpless. This guy, who used to be his enemy, had unexpectedly become his Zodiac companion. This change was too big. Yan Xiaoyi said anxiously, Then how can we verify whether we are the real Zodiac guardian gods? If we are, can the horns and white hair on my head return to normal? Ming Ming smiled and said, Of course you can. However, whether it is to verify your identity or help you return to normal, I can't do it. Only the king of the 12 zodiacs can help you. As she spoke, she looked at Qiyu with a smile. Yan Xiaoyi's handsome face was a little twisted. You're not telling me that this ruffian is the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, are you? Ming Ming said helplessly, When I first saw this guy, I also found it hard to believe, but it turns out that he is indeed the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, the King Kirin. At this time, Qiyu had already recovered from the previous shock. He said angrily, Yan Xiaoyi, do you think I want to take you as a brother? You want to steal my woman, I can't wait to kill you. However, since Ming Ming said that you might be the Zodiac sheep, we really need to improve our relationship. You can follow me from now on. Yan Xiaoyi said angrily, Follow you? Who do you think you are? His resentment towards Qiyu would not disappear so easily. A cold light flashed in Qiyu's eyes, and he said like a hooligan, It's up to you. If you want to live with 2 horns and a head of white hair for the rest of your life, I have nothing to say. Ming Ming, Vol, let's go. Wait a minute. Seeing that Qiyu was about to leave, Modi hurriedly stopped them. After seeing Ming Ming's original form alienation ability, Modi knew that it was impossible to threaten Chi-Yu with force. The title of the Zodiac Guardian God made her have a very strange feeling in her heart, and she even had a little desire for it. More importantly, if what Ming Ming said was true, then if Yan Xiaoyi wanted to change back to his previous appearance, he really had to rely on this little ruffian in front of him. As the saying goes, people under the eaves have to bow their heads. Compared with Yan Xiaoyi, she was much more rational. Chi-Yu turned around and said with a smile, "Beautiful teacher, is there anything else?" Modi took a deep breath and said, "There's no real hatred between you and little E. It's just jealousy over a woman. Little E has nothing to do with that woman now. Since we can become partners, I want to ask you to help him. These days, the white hair and horns on his head have brought too much pain to little E." Chi-Yu glanced at Yan Xiaoyi, but Yan Xiaoyi turned his head away, unwilling to look at him. However, he did not say anything and looked at Modi and said, "Okay, I promise you." Modi did not expect Chi-Yu to be so straightforward. "Thank you." Chi-Yu shook his head and said, "You don't need to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank my brother Vol. You are his teacher, and for the sake of my brother, I can't not agree. Moreover, you're right, there's no real hatred between me and Yan Xiaoyi. This is indeed a good solution. In the future, I hope that teacher Modi will take care of my brother Vol." Vol looked at Chi-Yu gratefully, and Chi-Yu's hand gently squeezed his shoulder. Modi said, "Okay, I promise you. I will take care of Tian Bo Guang in the future. Can we start now?" Chi-Yu did not intend to leave, and Ming Ming had been signaling him with her eyes. It was not easy to find the Zodiac Guardian God. How could he give up so easily? The three turned back and walked in front of Modi and Yan Xiaoyi. Chi-Yu looked at the two protrusions on Yan Xiaoyi's head, and could not help but smile. "I want to check whether you are the real Zodiac Guardian God. If you are, I only need to trigger the Zodiac sheep bloodline in Yan Xiaoyi's body, and make the traces of his awakening disappear. When the bloodline is really awakened, this attribute mutation ability can be controlled by himself. However, when I check and help him trigger the bloodline, a person's mood is very important. If either of us is in a bad mood, I'm afraid it will cause some adverse effects." Chi-Yu did not have Kiran's ability yet, but he had learned the ascending Qilin skill. Among Kiran's skills, there were several that could be used without practicing, including triggering the Zodiac bloodline and identifying the Zodiac Guardian God bloodline. Because Kiran's power was in the initial stage, he had to wait for a year for Kiran's bloodline to fully integrate with his body. At that time, Chi-Yu would have the ability to detect the existence of the Zodiac Guardian God within a certain range, as Zagru said. Therefore, when he saw Yan Xiaoyi and Modi, he would not feel anything. He had to go through a special ceremony and be close to them to detect whether they were the real Zodiac Guardian God. As for the mood that Chi-Yu said, it was just a fabrication. Yan Xiaoyi snorted coldly and said, "What adverse effects can there be?" Chi-Yu said seriously, "Every Zodiac Guardian God's ability is different, and it is closely related to the Zodiac he inherited. As for the sheep, if I remember correctly, if the bloodline is triggered well, the sheep will have the ability of Yang. In other words, when you do bed exercises you can last longer. If the effect is not good, then it's hard to say. Generally speaking, the possibility of impotence is higher. But I guess you don't care about this. Let's try it directly. Maybe it will have a good effect?" Yan Xiaoyi was shocked and hurriedly said, Don't try it first." He hurriedly took a few deep breaths, and the anger on his face gradually calmed down. Although he still looked at Chi-Yu with a complicated gaze, the hatred had disappeared. He forced a smile and said, "I'm in a much better mood now, I should be able to start." Chi-Yu shrugged and said, "Your mood is not too important. As the king of the Zodiac, my mood is more important. Just now you called me a thing, and I don't know who I am. But I can tell you that my mood is not very good. Come on, let's start." As a former hooligan, when it came to making jokes, 10 Yan Xiaoyi would not be a match for Qiyu. Qiyu had long known Yan Xiaoyi's character. He was arrogant, confident in his appearance and identity, and had a strong attraction to women. Perhaps Yan Xiaoyi did not care about other things because of his face, but it was related to the most important thing of a man. Yan Xiaoyi, who had always been popular with women, could not ignore it. Any man would not want to be impotent. Wait a minute. Yan Xiaoyi was a little embarrassed and said, "Then, what do you want to do to make your mood better?" Qiyu crossed his arms in front of him and said with a smile, "It's very simple. If you recognize me as your boss, my mood should be better. After all, I have to do my best to help my brother." "Recognize you as my boss?" The anger in Yan Xiaoyi's eyes rose again. Qiyu said indifferently, "Up to you. I promised your sister that I would help you awaken your bloodline, so I will definitely do it. Whether you recognize me as your boss or not is up to you. As for that man's ability, I don't think you need it." As he said so, his heart was blooming with joy. He had played a trick on Yan Xiaoyi this time, and he would have his revenge. Yan Xiaoyi hesitated and said, "Are there any conditions for me to recognize you as my boss?" Qiyu said, "It's very simple. In the future, whenever I like a woman, don't fight with me over her. This condition is not difficult, right?" When Qiyu just arrived at Qingbei University, he had already met a few beauties, and every one of them made him drool. Yan Xiaoyi had always been popular with beauties, and he was in the same university as him. Getting rid of this love rival first would naturally be more beneficial to his university life for the next 4 years. Yan Xiaoyi was obviously relieved and said, "This is simple. There are so many beauties in the world, why would I fight with you over them? I was just playing with that Nana last time. Okay, then I'll recognize you as my boss." As he said that, he took a step back and helplessly called him boss. Qiyu said with satisfaction, "Okay, you have to remember in the future, once a boss, always a boss. As long as you are a good little brother, your big brother, I will not treat you badly." Yan Xiaoyi nodded helplessly, but he mumbled, "It seems like I'm older than you." Qiyu could be said to be complacent now, and he ignored Yan Xiaoyi's mumbling. "Okay, then let's begin. This is my first time using Kiran's identification art." As he said that, Qiyu slowly closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, the other 4 people suddenly had a strange feeling. Qiyu, who was previously a ruffian, suddenly emitted an invisible layer of majesty. Although his eyes were closed, his body seemed unusually tall. "With Kiran's blood as a guide, I summon you in the name of Kiran. Warriors of the 12 Zodiac that guard the east, show me your Zodiac signs." Qiyu raised his right hand, bit his middle finger, and flicked it in the air. A drop of blood floated out. Qiyu made a strange hand gesture, and the drop of blood suddenly floated away. A layer of faint red light spread out in a circle, enveloping a radius of 10 meters. The first to react was Ming Ming. When the blood light enveloped her body, a faint 5-colored shadow appeared behind her, condensing into the shape of a 5-colored golden pheasant. Although the shadow was very faint, it was still clearly distinguishable. The second to react was Yan Xiaoyi. The shadow that appeared behind him was white, with 2 long gray horns and a body full of short white fur. It indeed looked like a sheep. Immediately after the shadow behind Yan Xiaoyi appeared, a layer of faint white light also appeared behind Modi. The first thing that appeared in the white light were 2 red dots. The red light was as dazzling as rubies, and an unusually cute snow-white rabbit appeared from the illusion. Its 2 front paws were folded in front of its body, looking very lifelike. Compared to the shadow behind Yan Xiaoyi, this rabbit was clearly much clearer. One could even see the texture of its fur. Ming Ming was overjoyed. "That's great! You really are the guardian gods of the Zodiac. Sister Modi's rabbit Zodiac bloodline is innately awakened. No wonder her leg strength is so strong." The awakening of the Zodiac was divided into 2 types, innately and acquired. The innately awakened ones were born with some of the special abilities of the guardian gods of the Zodiac, like Modi, Ming Ming, and Tyrannosaurus Rex Ryua. However, Qi Yu and Yan Xiaoyi belonged to the category of acquired awakenings. Acquired awakenings required the help of Heaven's guide or the king of the Zodiac. Acquired awakenings could only comprehend their own Zodiac skills after awakening. But after awakening, before reaching 5 clouds, the speed of improvement was faster than the innately awakened ones. Therefore, no matter if it was innately awakened or acquired awakenings, after reaching 5 clouds, their strength was almost the same. Of course, exceptions were special cases like Hai Ryua, who had a certain Western bloodline. Qi Yu inherited Kirin's bloodline, but because it was difficult to cultivate, it was not counted. Just when everyone thought that the Zodiac identification ceremony was over, another shadow appeared. This shadow was gray, and in the shadow, a huge rat loomed. Although it was a little blurrier than the shadow behind Yan Xiaoyi, the appearance of this shadow still made Qi Yu and Ming Ming stunned at the same time. Because this gray shadow appeared behind Vol. Ji Mingming cried out involuntarily, "No way! Qi Yu, you are too lucky. Your bloodline has not been completely integrated yet, but you actually found 3 guardian gods of the Zodiac." The field mouse said blankly, Me too?" Ji Mingming smiled and said, "Of course, you are the rat Zodiac of the 12 Zodiac guardians of this generation. It seems that your nickname, Vol, is really right." Qi Yu laughed and said, "Good character, this is good character can't be helped. Vol, it seems that we brothers will never be separated in the future." "Well, boss, can you get rid of my horn and white hair now?" Yan Xiaoyi was a little impatient. He was not interested in the Zodiac guardian gods, but he was worried about his horn and white hair. Qi Yu pointed his right hand forward, and his index finger pressed on Yan Xiaoyi's eyebrows. Kirin Guide, Zodiac Return. A faint black and silver light flashed and disappeared. Yan Xiaoyi only felt his body tremble slightly, and a cool air flowed from his eyebrows into his body, and his whole body felt indescribably comfortable. He could not see it, but Modi, Ji Mingming, and Vol saw it clearly. Yan Xiaoyi's hair roots quickly turned black, and gradually swallowed the white hair. A short black hair replaced the original white hair, and the 2 bumps on his forehead gradually became flat. "It's so itchy." Yan Xiaoyi touched his forehead subconsciously, and when he found that his forehead had returned to flat, he could not help but be overjoyed. "It's gone, it's really gone." "That's great, boss, thank you." Qi Yu said proudly, "How is it? You didn't call me boss for nothing, did you? In the future, follow your boss, and I guarantee that you will have a good life." Ji Mingming said, "Although the signs of your initial awakening have been guided by Qi Yu's Kirin aura, it has not really awakened. Now, Qi Yu does not have the ability to help the Zodiac Guardian warriors awaken. When this summer, I will take you to Tibet, and ask Master Zagru to help you awaken. After that, our camp will really have 3 more Zodiac Guardian warriors." The original contradiction disappeared in the strange appearance of the Zodiac Guardian God. Ji Mingming told the story of the Zodiac Guardian God to the 3 Zodiac Guardian God warriors. Qi Yu was also happy to be free. He sat under a big tree and dozed off. The grievances between him and Yan Xiaoyi had been resolved. It was always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. After an unknown amount of time, when Qi Yu's consciousness had gradually sunk into sleep, a sudden pain in his head woke him up. F***ck me, who hit my head? Don't you know that you can't touch Kirin's head? I was dreaming of a critical moment with a beautiful woman. Looking at Ming Ming's snickering face, he stood up helplessly. "Where is Vol? Where is Teacher Modi?" Ming Ming said grumpily, "You can really sleep anywhere. Vol and Sister Modi have gone back to school. Let's go, we should go back. Xiao Yi has classes in the afternoon." Qi Yu glanced at Yan Xiaoyi, who had regained his high spirits, and said sourly, "We just met for a few minutes, and you already call him Xiao Yi." Ming Ming snorted and said, We Zodiac Guardian God Warriors are the best of brothers and sisters. What's wrong with me calling him by his name? Yan Xiaoyi was obviously in a good mood after solving the problem on his head. He walked to Qi Yu and said in a low voice, "Boss, don't worry. I promised you that I won't flirt with any woman you like." Qi Yu glanced at Yan Xiaoyi. His eyes were clearly saying, "At least you know what's good for you, kid." The three of them returned to the main road and took a taxi to Qingbei University. When they returned to the gate of Qingbei University, Ming Ming saw an off-road vehicle with a military plate in front of the school gate. She suddenly said with some excitement, "Hey, why is he here?" Saying that, she was the first to jump out of the car. Yan Xiaoyi also got out of the car. Just when Qi Yu was about to get out of the car, he heard the voice of the taxi driver, "Sir, you haven't paid yet." What the hell? Why am I always the one getting hurt? Qi Yu cursed in his heart. Fortunately, the taxi didn't cost much money. In front of Ming Ming, he had to show some grace. Thus, he could only helplessly pay the taxi fare and get out of the car. When he got out of the car, he saw a burly man jump out of the car with a military plate in front of the school gate. Although Qi Yu thought that he was tall, he couldn't help feeling inferior when he saw this burly man. The burly man was 2 meters tall with broad shoulders and a broad back. He didn't look bloated when he wore a neat camouflage uniform. His firm muscles completely balanced the camouflage uniform. Just by standing there, he could already give people a lot of pressure. Ming Ming excitedly ran in front of the burly man and held his hand to say something. Qi Yu just got out of the car and needed to cross the road to get to them. Although he already thought that he treated Ming Ming as a good brother, when he saw her holding another man's hand, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. He thought to himself, could this big guy be Ming Ming's boyfriend? It turned out that she clearly liked this type of macho man. It's over, I don't have a chance. As he thought about it, he looked at his inconspicuous muscles, and the jealousy in his heart grew stronger. Just crossing the road, Qi Yu heard the burly man say in an extremely loud voice, "Ming Ming, I miss you too. You see, I just came back and heard that you're going to school here. Didn't I come to find you?" Qi Yu curled his lips and walked to stand beside Ming Ming. He squinted at the burly man a few times. The burly man in camouflage uniform had a dignified appearance. His dark and resolute face made him look imposing. The hooligan habits that had been cultivated for many years made Qi Yu feel a little angry. "Hey, who are you? What are you thinking about? Is my Ming Ming someone you can think of casually?" The burly man was obviously stunned for a moment. His gaze was a little strange. He lowered his head and looked at Qi Yu, who was a head shorter than him. "Then who are you?" Qi Yu snorted, puffed out his chest and said, "Listen carefully. I'm the super and invincible handsome Qi Yu that everyone is afraid of. More importantly, I'm Ming Ming's boyfriend." The burly man furrowed his brows and the aura on his body intensified. His sharp gaze caused Qi Yu to feel a little guilty. Yan Xiaoyi, who was standing to the side, saw that the situation wasn't looking good and hurriedly said, "Everyone, I still have class. I'll be going now, you guys continue chatting." After saying that, he immediately used the great art of slipping away, turned around and ran. His movement was so fast that Qi Yu even suspected that he should be the Zodiac rabbit. Ming Ming giggled and said, "All right, don't pretend here. Qi Yu, let me introduce you. This is my brother, his name is Jida." "What good deeds? I'm doing good deeds? I know Tang Jida." What did you just say? He is your brother?" Qi Yu finally reacted and couldn't help but widen his eyes. No matter how he looked, he couldn't see any similarities between the tall and strong Jida and Ming Ming. Jida's eyes were unfriendly as he said, "You're the first guy who dares to joke about my name. Fine, you have the guts." Qi Yu coughed a little awkwardly and said, Hello, big brother. I didn't know you were Ming Ming's brother, I'm really sorry." Jida sneered and said, "Aren't you called Xing Shan? There's no need to be embarrassed." As he said that, he extended his hand to Chi-yu and made a shaking gesture. Big brother, don't be polite with me. We're all on the same side, there's no need to shake hands. What a joke. Chi-yu had read a lot of novels and he had heard of this kind of handshake many times. Jida's big hands were like a fan. He didn't doubt that those small, hammer-like fingers could easily crush his bones. Jida snorted and obviously didn't want to lower himself to Chi-yu's level. He turned to Ming-Ming and said, "Baby Ming-Ming, is this guy really your boyfriend? When you were young, I said that whoever wants to marry my sister must first beat me. Only then can he prove that he has the ability to protect my sister. Look at him. Can he do it?" Chi-yu said angrily, "A man can't say he can't." When Jida's eyes fell on him, he hurriedly added, "But he can say he doesn't want it." Ji Ming-Ming smiled and said, "Big brother, don't mind him. This guy is always like this. Are you going to leave after coming back from the army?" Only then did Chi-yu notice that Jida, who looked to be 27 or 28 years old, had 2 bars and 1 star on his shoulder. He was actually a major. Jida was much more polite to his sister. "I won't be leaving this time. Dad said that he recently organized a special force and asked me to come back to join. Little sister, do you have classes in the afternoon? If you don't, come home with me. Our family can have a reunion. I'm going to report in 2 days." Ming-Ming smiled and said, "Okay. Brother, it's not easy for you to come back. Let's go back together. We haven't had a family reunion like this for several years. Oh, by the way, I still have to bring someone back." Jida was stunned for a moment and pointed to Chi-yu. "It can't be him, right? Ming-Ming, I don't want to criticize you, but you know what kind of temper Dad has. Do you think Dad will like someone like him?" Ji Ming-Ming blushed and said, "Brother, it's not what you think. Chi-yu and I are just ordinary friends. I have a special reason to bring him back." The brother and sister were talking and didn't notice that Chi-yu's face changed slightly after hearing Jida's words. Jida said, "Well, it's up to you. Anyway, you can explain it to Dad and Mom when you go back. Little sister, this is the first time you've brought a man home." After saying that, he opened the car door and sat down. Chi-yu glanced at Ming-Ming and said, "Go back with your brother. I won't be in any danger by myself in school." He tried to make his tone as calm as possible, not allowing his emotions to be exposed. Ming-Ming whispered, "How can I do that? Sister Ryue has repeatedly told me to look after you. You also know that Kirin's first year of awakening is the most dangerous period. At this time, you still don't have the ability to find the other Zodiac guardian gods. When you and Kirin's bloodline fuse next year, it will be much better to gather all the 12 Zodiac guardian gods. Let's go. My house is not a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Are you afraid?" Chi-yu was angry and said, "I'll go. Cowards are afraid." After saying that, he opened the back door and got on Jida's off-road vehicle. Ming-Ming smiled and thought to herself, "It's better to provoke than to invite. Let's see if you still won't go with me." While thinking, she got on the passenger seat and sat side by side with her brother. With a low roar, the off-road vehicle started instantly. The sudden push made Chi-yu jump and he quickly grabbed the handrail on the edge of the roof to stabilize his body. Jida looked at Chi-yu from the rearview mirror and showed a trace of disdain. At this time, Chi-yu also raised his head and his eyes immediately caught the trace of disdain. Chapter 16. Jida smiled and said, "That's because the senior officers love me. Little sister, why are you saying this in front of outsiders?" Chi-yu thought to himself, "What do you mean by lacking something? It's clearly immoral." Jida drove very fast and was extremely skilled. Although the speed was fast, it was very stable and did not give people a feeling of fear. In this regard, it was obvious that he was much better than Tyrannosaurus Rex and Ryue. The off-road vehicle drove smoothly. Along the way, Ming-Ming and Jida talked and laughed. Chi-yu sat in the spacious back seat and did not say a word. He increasingly realized that if a person did not have the ability, he would indeed be looked down upon. If he wanted others to look up to him, he had to keep working hard. After driving for about 40 minutes, Jida stopped in front of a residential area. At the entrance of the residential area, there were 2 soldiers with loaded guns standing guard. They took a look at Jida's license plate and let him in. At this moment, even if Chi Yu was stupid, he knew that Ming Ming should have grown up in a military family. The residential area looked very simple. There were a total of 4 or 5 buildings, each of which was 18 floors. It was a very standard building. Although the residential area was not considered luxurious, the greenery was very good. Almost 70% of the area was green. Jida found a parking space by the road and parked the car. The 3 of them got out of the car. Ming Ming was still maintaining her excitement. She pulled Chi Yu and said, "Look, this is my home." Jida looked at his sister pulling Chi Yu's sleeve and frowned. He said, "Let's go. Let's hurry up." As he spoke, he walked to the door closest to the car and quickly pressed dozens of numbers. The door opened with a click. As soon as they entered the building, Chi Yu felt that there was something strange here. However, when he looked carefully, he could not find what was strange. The 3 of them took the elevator to the 11th floor. When they got out of the elevator, Chi Yu found that there was only one door on this floor. There were 3 words stamped in gold on the door. On the right side of the door was another password area. Jida pressed a few keys and the door opened naturally. Ming Ming smiled and said, "Please, Chi Yu. You are a rare guest in my house." Walking through the door, Chi Yu was shocked. It was a 50-square-meter hall. The floor was covered with black and white marble, and there was a 50-inch TV on one of the walls. Black sofas were arranged in 2 semicircles, giving off a gloomy vibe. What a big house! It seemed like this floor belonged to Ming Ming's family. "Oh, who's back?" A deep and magnetic voice sounded, and an old man about 1.8 meters tall walked out from the aisle at the side of the hall. The old man looked to be in his 60s, and his face was ruddy. He wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses and held a newspaper in his hand. It was obvious that he was reading it. Dressed in ordinary home clothes, the old man looked very ordinary. There was nothing special about his appearance. However, Chi Yu sensed a special aura from him. It was the aura of a commander who commanded thousands of troops. "Dad!" Ming Ming and Jida called out almost at the same time. The old man chuckled and said, "It turns out that my baby daughter is back. Oh, and there is a guest." The old man raised his head, and his eyes fell on Chi Yu's face. It was a pair of eyes full of wisdom, as deep as a bottomless cold lake. In an instant, Chi Yu saw many things in his eyes that he could not explain. Perhaps it was because of the aura. He only felt a heat in his chest and back, and his body suddenly revealed a trace of invisible momentum. This warm feeling was very familiar to Chi Yu. It would only appear when the Kirin pattern appeared. He could not help but be shocked. The seemingly ordinary old man in front of him had only glanced at him, and he had actually stimulated his Kirin aura to resist it? Chi Yu was surprised, and so was the old man. From the moment he looked at Chi Yu, he found that this young man, who looked to be about the same age as his daughter, had an indescribable temperament. The old man had seen countless people, but this was the first time he had seen such a temperament. He thought for a moment, and suddenly realized that this was the temperament of a leader, and he had only seen such a temperament in his old friend of many years. What a special young man. "Hello, uncle." Chi Yu did not reveal his usual ruffian temperament, and respectfully greeted the old man. The old man smiled and said, "Please take a seat. Are you Jida's friend or Ming Ming's friend?" "He is my little sister's friend." Jida, who was domineering before, obviously restrained himself after seeing the old man. He stood at the side in a standard military posture, and said respectfully. The old man's eyes moved, and he glanced at his daughter next to him. Ming Ming held the old man's hand and added, "Dad, we are just ordinary friends. Do you remember Master Zagru? Chi Yu is the person that Master Zagru likes the most." The old man showed a trace of surprise. Oh? So he is someone that the master likes, then he is not an outsider. It is rare for you and your sister to come back, sit and chat with me for a while. When the old man sat down, Chiyu followed Jida and his sister to sit down. The old man took off his glasses, put the newspaper to the side, and said to Jida, "Have you explained the matter with Blue Dragon?" Jida's sitting and standing posture were the same, and he said respectfully, "Dad, I have explained it clearly, and await the chief's orders at any time." The old man nodded and said, "That's good, you can go and report tomorrow. I will give them a call first." "Dad, Big Brother finally came back. Why don't you let him stay at home for a few more days, so that we can show our filial piety?" Ming Ming said with some resentment. The old man smiled indifferently and said, "He is different from you, he is a soldier. As a soldier, he must listen to orders at any time, and appear at the position he should be at the fastest speed. No matter what identity, this must be done. Otherwise, how can we soldiers establish our military prestige? Doing his job well is the best way to be filial to me." Jida suddenly stood up and did a standard military salute. "Yes, Chief, I will go and report tomorrow. The army is the most suitable place for me." The old man smiled faintly and said, "All right, you don't need to be like in the army at home. Today you have a good rest. Oh, by the way, I still haven't asked this little brother Chiyu, where does he work?" The old man's words were very polite, but it always brought invisible pressure to Chiyu. The old man's words to Jida just now couldn't help but make him admire him greatly. He quickly replied, "I am the same as Ming Ming, at Qingbei University. I am a freshman." The old man nodded and said with a smile, "Qingbei is not bad, it has sent a lot of talents to our country. Listening to your accent, you should be from the capital." Chiyu nodded and said, "Yes, I have lived in Jingshan district since childhood. Uncle, you can just call me by my name." Ji Ming Ming teased, "Oh, I didn't see it. Chiyu, when did you become so polite?" The old man said, "Ming Ming, don't be rude. Chiyu, you are the first boy that Ming Ming brought back. And this lad is very good. You must learn well in Qingbei. In the future, as long as you can find a suitable position for yourself, it can be considered as contributing to the country." Ming Ming said with a smile, "Dad, you just told Big Brother that this is not the army, why did you bring that back home?" The old man somewhat helplessly said, "You little girl. All right, let's not talk about the country, let's talk about you. How is your studies at Qingbei University?" Ming Ming said, "I am your daughter, how can I be bad? I am a talented girl in the foreign languages department." The old man looked at Chiyu and said, "Then what department did you study?" Chiyu said with some embarrassment, "I studied philosophy." The old man was stunned for a moment. "Philosophy? Then are you going to be a teacher in the future?" When Jida heard that Chiyu studied philosophy, he almost laughed out loud. Although he had never been to an ordinary university, he also knew that philosophy was generally the most hopeless. Chiyu scratched his head and said, "I don't know what I want to do in the future. Right now, I can only take one step at a time." There was a trace of disappointment in the old man's eyes. He thought for a moment and was about to say something when another person walked out from the aisle where he had appeared before. This person was wearing a well-ironed military uniform. As soon as he came out from the aisle, he stood still and said, "Chief, there is a call for you." The old man stood up and said, "You children chat first, I will go pick up a call. Secretary, get them some fruits or something to eat." "Yes, Chief," Secretary replied emotionlessly. "Secretary?" This soldier turned out to be the old man's secretary. Chiyu looked at the tall and upright soldier in front of him and was filled with shock. This soldier, who was called Secretary by the old man, had 2 bars and 4 stars on his shoulder, but he was just a secretary. According to normal calculations, a secretary was 3 ranks lower than the chief. In that case, wasn't this old man a general? One must know that general was the highest military rank in the Yanhuang Republic. Even the vice-chairman of the Central Military Commission was only at this level. The old man's surname was Ji. His surname was Ji. Oh my God! Could it be that 20 years ago, as the commander of the Yanhuang Republic's first special forces, he led his troops to create one military legend after another and was known as the God of War, the commander-in-chief of the Yanhuang Republic's army, General Ji Changming? The Special Forces was the most outstanding army in the Yanhuang Republic. It could also be said to be the trump card of the entire Yanhuang Republic. All the soldiers in the army were selected special forces from various military regions. Their mission was to complete all kinds of almost impossible missions, maintain the stability of the country, and participate in all the peacekeeping forces of the United Nations. They were the super elites who fought against the terrorists. Ming Ming obviously saw the surprise in Qi Yu's eyes. She laughed and said, "You must have guessed my father's identity. Don't go out and talk about it. I don't want others to know whose daughter I am." Qi Yu was still excited. He never thought that he would be a guest at the house of a general, and the most legendary general at that. Not only was Marshal Ji Changming the #1 marshal in the country, but he also had a very high prestige in the world and held the position of vice-chairman of the Central Military Commission. What did this mean? No wonder Jida looked down on him. Jida suddenly said, "Little brother, I'll take you to see something." Ming Ming smiled and said, "Brother, why are you here again? Every time a guest of the same age comes to our house, you always take them to see your treasures. You don't even ask if they like it." Jida snorted and said, "Is there a man who doesn't like knives? Qi Yu, your name is Qi Yu, right? Do you want to go and see?" Qi Yu took a deep breath and calmed his somewhat excited heart. He glanced at Jida's somewhat provocative eyes and said indifferently, "Of course I'll go. Why not? I also like knives." Ming Mingji said, "Then you guys go. I'll chat with Dad later." Under Jida's lead, Qi Yu followed him into the corridor. The corridor was not considered long. After passing through 2 doors, the two of them came to a spacious room. This was an extremely large room, at least 100 square meters. The room seemed very spacious. Other than a computer and a bed, there was nothing else. The floor of the room was very familiar to Qi Yu. It was the same floor as Hai Ryue's training room. "Didn't you want me to see your knife?" Qi Yu looked at Jida calmly. Perhaps Ming Ming Ji could not see it, but how could he not see it? Jida called him out alone. It was not as simple as just looking at the weapon. Jida casually closed the door. Qi Yu clearly saw that the ordinary-looking wooden door was 3 times thicker than an ordinary door. Jida said indifferently, "Brat, remember what I said in front of Qingbei University? If you want to chase after my sister, you must first defeat me. Although I don't know why Ming Ming wants to follow you and even let you go home with us, I don't want to see you by her side in the future. From the first time I saw you, I could tell from your flickering gaze that you are not a good person. I don't care about anything else, but if you want to get close to my sister, you can't. I called you over mainly to give you a warning. In the future, I don't want to see you and my sister together." Qi Yu looked at Jida coldly. A ruffian also has a ruffian's dignity. He knew that Jida looked down on him and did not want to explain anything. The man did not explain, so he replied without hesitation, "What if I say no?" Jida's eyes lit up. "No? Do you think you can say this word in front of me?" Qi Yu smiled coldly. "What if I insist on saying no? What will you do? Beat me to death? Or break my legs?" Jida clenched his huge fist. "The soundproofing of this room is very good. If you defeat me, you can say this word. Otherwise, scram further away." Although Qi Yu knew that he was not Jida's opponent, but as a man, his heart was already boiling. He said coldly, "Wicked, I have tolerated you for a long time. If you want to fight, then come." Jida was stunned for a moment. "What did you call me? Damn it, people in the army said that I can't be wicked, not wicked." Chiyu looked at him provocatively. I called you wicked, so what? Are you going to lick me? Although he was impulsive, it was not that he did not consider it carefully. Indeed, he knew that he was far from being a match for the big man in front of him, but he was very clear that in the house of a general, Jida would not kill him no matter how angry he was. Since that was the case, what was the harm in fighting? At worst, he would lose and be beaten up by him. With his Inkiran's super recovery ability, it would not take long for him to recover. In a situation where his life was not in danger, how could Chiyu be afraid? Fine. Jida was so angry that he laughed. His body moved slightly, and he whipped his leg towards Chiyu. The whipping leg did not feel as powerful as the roundhouse kick, but Uncle Zhou had explained in detail to Chiyu that real masters rarely used roundhouse kick. Although the roundhouse kick was more powerful, it would also expose the weak side of one's joints to the opponent. In a fight between masters of the same level, it was easy for the opponent to take advantage of this flaw. Although the whipping leg was less powerful, it would directly hit the opponent's joints where the joints were the hardest. Jida's seemingly casual kick was definitely not something that Yan Xiaoi could compare with. Before his leg even reached Yan Xiaoi, it had already brought about a gust of wind that was as sharp as a blade. To be able to instantly form a gust of wind at such a close distance, it could be seen how powerful his kick was. With Chiyu's speed, he did not even have a chance to dodge. Seeing the kick coming towards him, he immediately shouted, "Come!" Both of his palms met Jida's attack. In the afternoon, Chiyu had relied on his lightning ability to generate electricity and instantly paralyze Yan Xiaoi, allowing him to achieve victory in an instant. Now that he was facing Jida, he had no choice but to use the little Qilin cloud energy he had. Moreover, it was double. The moment Jida's leg arrived in front of Chiyu, his palms had already stood up. There was a red ball of light in the center of his left palm, and a purple ball in the right. Jida only felt a burning sensation and a numbing sensation coming from his legs. His momentum suddenly weakened a little, and then it bombarded on Chiyu's palms. Jida's strength was still more fierce than Chiyu had imagined. He only felt a strong force coming from his palms, and his arms were suddenly shocked. Jida's leg directly hit his chest, and his whole body flew up and violently hit the wall not far behind him. Fortunately, when Chiyu shouted the 9 words incantation, he simultaneously mobilized the 2 abilities of wind and water to protect his chest. Although his chest felt stuffy, his bones did not break. Just one kick, Chiyu's thundercloud force had been exhausted. Although it was barely blocked, he could not help but feel shocked. Today, he had seen Modi's leg, but the strength of Modi's leg was absolutely not as overbearing and fierce as Jida's. It was a huge force that was almost impossible to resist. Jida did not pursue, and there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. "So you are also a paranormal, no wonder you dare to shout at me. However, I have seen many paranormal, and your strength is not enough to say no to me. I just used 30% of my strength in that kick, and the next one will increase it to 50%. If you can still block it, then you are a man, not a coward." The burning pain in his chest made Chiyu's mind clear. Jida's strength was something he had never seen before, and this invisible pressure was only brought to him by Hai Ryue after her nature mutation. 30% of his strength was already so terrifying. Now that he had lost the thundercloud force, how was he going to resist 50% of his strength? Jida did not give Chiyu too much time to think. With a cold snort, he took a step forward with his left foot and lifted his right leg like lightning. His movement was exactly the same as before, and it was another whip kick towards Chiyu. In the face of absolute strength, Chiyu's half-baked method of deflecting the force would not be of any use. At this moment, his heart was filled with grief and indignation, not only because he was looked down upon by his opponent, but also because he was sad about his own weakness. Seeing Jida's kick coming towards him, he only had enough time to move his body to the side, and once again use his hands to block Jida's leg. Something strange happened. Chi-Yu was shocked to find that the wind brought about by Jida's kick was not rushing towards him, but instead, it produced a suction force that pulled his body towards Jida's leg, like a moth flying into a flame. Jida's goal was very simple, just as Chi-Yu had imagined. Of course, he did not want to kill Chi-Yu, but for the sake of his sister, he wanted to teach Chi-Yu a lesson that would last forever. At this moment, the disdainful expression on his face was even more obvious. From the fact that Chi-Yu's body no longer emitted that strange light from before, he knew that Chi-Yu could no longer block his attack. The leg arrived. Just as that leg, which was like a steel pillar, swept towards Chi-Yu's arms, suddenly, the shadow behind Chi-Yu, which was cast on the floor by the light in the room, moved. Immediately after, in that instant, Chi-Yu clearly felt a turbulent flow of heat within his body, and it abnormally surged into his right arm. His left arm subconsciously retreated, and his right palm swept out, directly hitting Jida's calf. With a muffled bang, Chi-Yu was surprised to find that the huge impact that he had imagined did not come. Jida's kick, which was certain to succeed, had actually been blocked by his own right palm. Jida's heart was filled with shock. In that instant, when Chi-Yu's right palm hit his calf, he clearly felt as if he had kicked an iron plate. The violent rebounding force actually caused his right leg to withdraw faster than when he had kicked out, and under the effect of the rebounding force, he even took a step back. 50% of his strength. In the army, there were only a handful of people who could block a kick with 50% of his strength, but this ruffian in front of him had only used one palm to shake off the force of his leg. What did this prove? Just as Jida was a little stunned, the Chi-Yu in front of him suddenly changed. His originally black eyes suddenly turned black and silver. He clenched his right fist, and made a forward punch, fiercely punching in Jida's direction. This was not under Chi-Yu's control. He suddenly found that his body seemed to have changed, and a familiar voice in the depths of his heart roared, "Kiran's dignity cannot be violated. Kiran's arm break the firmament." In that instant, Chi-Yu's somewhat messy hair stood up, and his whole body emitted a layer of black aura. His eyes flashed with a strange demonic light, and the black and silver light passed through his fist, intertwining with each other and condensing into a beam of light as thick as an arm, and went straight for Jida's chest. Jida's calm face suddenly showed a trace of fear, because he suddenly found that the air around his body seemed to have solidified, and his huge body was unexpectedly enveloped by a huge pressure, and the invisible momentum forced him to actually have no choice but to fight. "Get out of the way!" Chi-Yu roared, and a black and silver shadow appeared behind him. Although it was only a flash in an instant, his momentum was instantly raised to the limit. Boom! Whether it was Chi-Yu or Jida, before the black and silver light exploded, neither of them could have imagined such an outcome. The entire building shook violently because of this simple forward punch, and the huge roar could probably be clearly heard in the entire neighborhood. Jida fell to the ground, and looked at the big hole in the wall with a diameter of 1 meter, his face as pale as paper. In that instant, the momentum that had locked onto him suddenly fluctuated, and he was shaken to the side by a step. Then, the mixed black and silver light had already brushed past him, bombarding the wall a few meters behind him. Jida's attack was not his strongest point. His strongest point was actually his defense, but after seeing the effect of Chi-Yu's attack, he was very clear that even if he used 120% of his strength, he might not be able to defend against such an attack. Moreover, because he looked down on Chi-Yu before, he did not even gather all his strength to fight with Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu was also stunned, because he did not know what was going on at all. Before that familiar voice disappeared, it only said one sentence: "Kiran's strongest point is always his right arm." With a bang, the door was violently smashed open, and the previous secretary rushed in. Although he was already a senior colonel, his movements were still very agile. No matter how good the room's soundproofing was, It was impossible for the outside to not hear the sound that shocked the entire neighborhood. The secretary saw the big hole in the wall at a glance, and his pupils immediately contracted, and he pointed the miniature pistol in his hand at Chi-Yu without hesitation. Ming Ming entered the room behind him, and when she saw the scene in front of her, she could not help but be stunned. At this moment Jida was just getting up from the ground, and he hurriedly said, "Uncle Lee, it's fine, it's fine." There was a questioning look in Secretary Lee's eyes, but Jida had already walked a few steps to Chi-Yu's side, put his arm around his shoulder, and said, "I was just sparring with this brother." The shock in Secretary Lee's eyes could not be concealed. "Xiaoda, did you lose?" Jida said a little awkwardly, "Yes. I didn't expect Brother Chi-Yu to be so strong, it's fine." Secretary Lee smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid at least 100 people will come here in less than 2 minutes. He was not wrong at all. As soon as he finished speaking, there was already a series of knocks on the door, and to Chi-Yu's great surprise, he actually saw an armed helicopter from the room's window. 10 minutes later, when the old man had dealt with everything with a profound look in his eyes, and the house was restored to peace, Chi-Yu was still a little sluggish. He was not surprised by the sudden appearance of the special forces. After all, the troops protecting a chief must be the elite of the elite. His sluggishness was because of himself. The simple words of the Qilin arm, appearing in the skybreaker, had brought him a great shock. "Sit down, Chi-Yu." The old man returned to the hall with a smile, and sat down on the sofa of the main seat, as if nothing had happened before. Only Chi-Yu, Ming Ming, Jida, and the old man were left in the hall. The eyes of Ming Ming's family were all focused on Chi-Yu, making him feel uncomfortable. After hearing the old man's greeting, he walked to Ming Ming and sat down. "As expected of the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, you once again let me see the magic of our guardian of the East." The old man's eyes showed a light of admiration. Chi-Yu was shocked, you know? As he said, he also glanced at Ming Ming next to him. The old man nodded and said, "When I first met Master Zagru, he told me. Moreover, in our country's military, there has always been a special force, and many of their members are from the Guardian of the East. In a sense, the purpose of the Guardian of the East and our army is the same. We are all protecting our motherland. Only by helping each other can we maximize our strength, and also make our Yanhuang Republic more stable and stronger." Ming Ming whispered in Chi-Yu's ear, "Only my father and a few senior officials of the Yanhuang Republic know of our existence." The old man smiled and said, "From my own point of view, I admire you people who have been silently protecting the country, so on behalf of the country, I thank you, and I am willing to represent the country to give you all the help you need. I will pretend that what happened just now did not happen, and if De has offended you, I apologize on his behalf." Chi-Yu quickly stood up and said, "Uncle, there is nothing between me and Brother Jida, we are just learning from each other." Speaking of this, his left hand subconsciously touched his right arm. Kirin's arm, what gave his Kirin's arm such a tyrannical ability? Chapter 17. Jida didn't say anything, but his eyes never left Chi-Yu's body. When he heard his father's call, he hurriedly responded. Chi-Yu and Ming Ming bid farewell to the old man and left the Ji family under Jida's lead. As soon as the three of them went down from the elevator to the first floor, they saw dozens of engineering soldiers rushing in from the outside, carrying all kinds of tools. They didn't even take the elevator, they actually climbed the stairs directly. Chi-Yu vaguely heard someone say, "What's going on? This building is designed to be nuclear-proof. How can it be destroyed by humans?" Hearing this, Chi-Yu couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The design of a nuclear-proof bomb is so exaggerated? The three of them got into Jida's off-road vehicle again and sat in the same position. Jida started the car, but he didn't start it. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Chi-Yu in the back seat. "I've decided." Chi-Yu was shocked by his sudden action. "What have you decided?" Jida said firmly, "I want to worship you as my master." "What?" Chi-Yu almost bit his tongue. Did I hear it wrong? You want to worship me as your master? Jida nodded and said, That's right, I want to worship you as my master. I've always thought that I'm already very strong. This time, I just came back from the Blue Dragon Special Forces, and I'm ready to join the Special Forces that my father mentioned just now. However, it seems that I'm a little too hasty, my strength is far from enough, so I want to worship you as my master and learn from you. The last word made Chi-Yu a little embarrassed. Wicked, oh no, this Jida. I have nothing to teach you. Moreover, you're much older than me, and you're Ming Ming's brother, how can you do this? Jida sternly said, As the saying goes, there's no seniority in learning. The one who has already attained first. You're so strong, so I must take you as my master. This matter is settled. Master, I'll kowtow to you later to formally take you as my disciple. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly as he looked at Ming Ming, who was trying hard to hold back her laughter. Ming Ming, is your brother okay? Did he go crazy because of the shock? Bah! Ming Ming said snappily. My brother has undergone special training, and his will is harder than steel. However, I am very curious as to how you did it just now. That should have been impossible. Didn't you notice that all the walls of this building are 1.5 meters thick? The internal structure is reinforced concrete, and there is a layer of reinforced alloy material on both sides. Even the shock wave of a nuclear bomb can't destroy it, but you actually blasted a big hole in it. It's really hard to imagine. Our neighborhood is protected by an electromagnetic shield. No missiles can lock onto this place. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, Whether you believe it or not, even I don't know how I did it just now. My heart is in a mess. Let's go back first and talk. Jida quickly drove Ming Ming and Chi-Yu to the entrance of Qingbei University. He wanted to immediately take him as his master, but he was stopped by Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu didn't want to inexplicably have a disciple, so he almost ran away with Ming Ming. He didn't notice that in the process of running away, he had unknowingly pulled Ming Ming's hand. On the way back, although Ming Ming kept smiling because of her brother and Chi-Yu's appearance, her heart was actually filled with doubts. She really couldn't believe that her brother actually lost to Chi-Yu, and the attack power that Chi-Yu displayed was really too terrifying. Walking into the campus, Ming Ming unobtrusively pulled out her hand from Chi-Yu's hand. In Qingbei University, she already had some fame, so she didn't want to see her gossip appear. Moreover, Chi-Yu's hand was very hot. Being held by him made Ming Ming feel a little flustered. Chi-Yu, now it's just the two of us. You can tell me what's going on? Ming Ming asked in a low voice. Chi-Yu grunted, Actually, I really don't know what's going on. Ming Ming, let me ask you, in the past generations of Kirin, has there ever been an ability called Kirin Arm? If there is, then is it very strong? Ming Ming thought about it and frowned. I don't think so. I've heard Master Zagru mention some things about Kirin, but I've never heard of Kirin Arm. Kirin's ability is generally determined according to the Kirin magic cloud that he belongs to. The stronger the thundercloud force, the stronger the ability. You're Kirin of the 4 magic clouds, so your ability should be thunder, fire, water, and wind. Where did this Kirin Arm come from? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly, but I used Kirin Arm to defeat your brother in your family. Ming Ming frowned. Kirin Arm? Kirin Arm, what exactly is it? I'm afraid that even Master Zagru doesn't know. It seems that the bloodline of your Ink Kirin is indeed different from the previous Kirin. You'll have to figure it out yourself. If you can control your own strength and unleash the attack power of Kirin Arm, then you'll be the one protecting us in the future, and we won't need to protect you anymore. Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment and said, It can't be that scary, right? Ming Ming chuckled and said, My brother is a very arrogant person, and he's always very confident in his own strength. If you hadn't given him a huge blow this time, would he have acknowledged you as his master? Do you know? My brother's overall strength is even stronger than when I undergo origin mutation. You should be able to calculate this, right? Chi was shocked and said, Your brother is that strong? Ming Ming nodded and said, My brother cultivates a special technique, and what he learned is a killing move from the special forces. Not to mention me, even if Sister Ryua wants to defeat him, I'm afraid that she would have to rely on her own strong defense to win. My brother once used some special drugs, and he was the only one who succeeded in that experiment. The experiment was forced to be cancelled, and my brother became the only Special Forces soldier who succeeded after that experiment. His physical attack and defense are far beyond the limits of ordinary people. Otherwise, how do you think he got his nickname? My neighborhood looks ordinary, but not only does it have an electromagnetic shield that can prevent any missiles from locking onto it, all the buildings are built to the standard of being able to resist nuclear bombs. To be able to leave such a big hole in such a building, the power of Kirin Arm's attack can only be described as terrifying. When I saw the hole in the wall, you can't imagine how shocked I was. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, Not to mention you guys, even I was shocked, because I don't know where that power came from, and I don't know how to use it to unleash its power. Ming Ming thought for a moment and said, If you want to find the answer, I'm afraid you can only feel your own ability through cultivation. I don't know how to help you. When I go back, I'll contact Master Zagru and see if he can find out the secret. No, Ming Ming, don't tell Master yet, let me figure it out myself. I don't want Master to have too high expectations of me, after all, this is not the ability I truly possess. When I can control this ability, it won't be too late to let him know. Also, don't tell the other Zodiac warriors, this will be a secret between us for the time being. Ming Ming looked at Chi-Yu with some doubt and said, All right, I hope you can figure it out yourself. Returning to the dormitory, as soon as they entered the door, Chi-Yu and Ming Ming were met with the strange gazes of the other two beauties. I thought you ran away with Ming Ming. Even if you've reunited after a long time, there's no need to be so intimate for so long. It's already evening, Su Qing said as she looked at them with a smile that wasn't a smile. Ming Ming's pretty face blushed and said, Bad Qing-er, you're getting worse and worse. Oh, it smells so good. Big Sister Yun must have made dinner, I'm starving to death. At noon, she only ate some mutton skewers before she was interrupted by Modi and Yan Xiaoi. It was already evening, it would be strange if she wasn't hungry. Su Qing stared at Chi-Yu with her eyes wide open and said, You're kidding, going out on a date with a beauty, but you don't even treat her to a meal, that's too much. Chi-Yu looked at Ming Ming, and really didn't know what to say. In the end, it was Ming Ming who helped him out. Qing-er, don't talk nonsense, he's my cousin, what date? If you think he's good, then you can be his girlfriend. Is it that rare? Let's eat, that whatever cousin, he doesn't have food for you. As Su Qing spoke, she had already pulled Shen Yun, who hadn't said a word, to the dining table with a smile on his face. Chi-Yu said to Ming Ming, You guys eat, I'll go to the cafeteria to eat. Oh right, how do I get to the cafeteria? Ming Ming was stunned and said, You're not eating in the dormitory? Big Sister Yun's cooking is very good. Chi-Yu looked at Su Qing, hurriedly shook his head and said, Forget it, I'll go to the cafeteria to eat, it's not good to disturb you guys. After saying that, he didn't ask where the cafeteria was, and turned around to leave. After all, this was the female dormitory, and in the future, they would be living together for a long period of time, plus today's awkwardness. Chi-Yu felt that it was better for him not to have too much contact with this pair of lesbian beauties. Of course, the main reason was naturally that he didn't want to pay up to 500 yuan in food expenses. An hour later, when Chi-Yu came back from the cafeteria, the three beauties were sitting in the living room watching TV. I'm back. Chi-Yu closed the door and stretched his body in satisfaction. Qing Bei's treatment is really good, the staple food is unlimited. I don't know which wise leader made this rule, I haven't eaten so well for a long time. Ming Ming faintly smiled and said, Come over to watch TV for a while? Chi-Yu looked at the sofa that could only sit 3 people, shook his head, and said, "Forget it, you guys watch." After saying that, he directly returned to his room and locked the door. If it was normal, he would definitely be thick-skinned to squeeze over to the 3 beauties, but right now, his heart was filled with the 3 words Kieran's arm, and for the first time, he didn't have the mood to tease the beauties. Chen Yun faintly smiled and said to Ming Ming, "This cousin of yours is quite honest." "What? He's honest, and he's indeed honest." Although she said that, Ming Ming secretly said in her heart, if he was honest, I'm afraid that there wouldn't be anyone in this world who wasn't honest. However, today this ruffian really seemed to have changed. Actually, Ming Ming didn't know that it was not only because of Kieran's arm that made Chi-Yu give up getting close to the beauties and choose to return to his room to cultivate, but more importantly, it was because of the blow that Jida gave him today. Ruffians also have dignity. When Chi-Yu discovered that his strength was not enough to protect his dignity, his mentality had already changed. Returning to his room, Chi-Yu directly sat on the bed, and according to the ascending Qilin art that Hai Ryua taught him, he had already cultivated a few times before coming to Qingbei University, and under Hai Ryua's guidance, he basically already understood how to cultivate. Very quickly, Chi-Yu entered the state of cultivation, but he discovered that the thundercloud force that he usually cultivated according to the fixed route had actually completely disappeared, not even a trace was left behind. Don't mention the 4 attributes of thundercloud force, not even one attribute was left. His mind searched his body, but his meridians were empty, as if he had returned to an ordinary person. Just when Chi-Yu didn't know what to do, a deep voice sounded in his heart, "No need to search, you won't find anything. With your current ability, using Kieran's arm naturally has to pay the price." The voice was so familiar. It was the same voice that Chi-Yu heard when he used Kieran's arm today. He was not surprised, but happy, and hurriedly asked through his mind, "Who are you? Don't remember me? We met not long ago." The deep voice was very gentle, giving Chi-Yu a somewhat cordial feeling. Chi-Yu couldn't help but be stunned when he heard his words. "Met? How can your voice be in my heart? You can't be the old monster Xieji that Hai Ryua said had fused with my body, right?" "What? You actually said that I am a monster. I am also a magical beast among the mythological beasts." Xieji roared angrily. As soon as he heard that he had guessed correctly, Chi-Yu's curiosity suddenly rose. In addition to being afraid of heights, he was a person who did not know fear. Suddenly having a Xieji in his body, he only felt that it was very novel, and there was no fear. "Is it really you? Hai Ryue only told me that you have fused with my body, and said that I have the blood of Kieran's king. She was not very clear. What is going on? Why did you come into my body, and what is going on with the Kieran's arm today?" Xieji said, "Don't ask so many questions at once, rest assured, I will explain to you one by one. After all, in a sense, you are now my master." Chi-Yu's heart was warm, and he could not help but be very excited. Tian Hai Ryue said that even she was not sure that she could defeat a Xieji with 3,000 years of cultivation, and this Xieji was the king of the Xieji family. No matter why the current situation occurred, if he had such a powerful servant, who would he be afraid of in the future? As if feeling the excitement in Chi-Yu's heart, Xieji said calmly, "You don't have to be too happy. Although you are my master, I can't help you fight. To be precise, after fusing with your body, I have also lost the ability to fight." "No way. Don't be so emotional. Listen to me from the beginning to the end, and you will understand what I mean." Xieji's voice was still very calm. Chi-Yu felt a heat flow along his wrist into his relic bead, and then a cool air flow from the relic bead back into his body. His agitated mood suddenly calmed down, and his whole body was filled with a peaceful atmosphere. What could be better than the relic bead for calming the mind? "Well, then you say it." Chi-Yu calmed down and waited for Xieji to speak. After Xieji was silent for a while, it said, This has to start from the relationship between our Siege family and the Kirin clan in ancient times. Kirin is the king of the ancient mythological beasts. Every Kirin has a perfect appearance and powerful strength. However, the number of Kirin clan is very small, and Kirin itself has a strong reproductive ability, which makes Kirin often have relations with the opposite sex. Each Kirin will have at least a dozen or even dozens of partners of the opposite sex. Therefore, in ancient times there is the saying of romantic Kirin. Chiyu smiled and said, "No wonder I like beautiful women so much. It turns out that this is passed down by Kirin. I am a very serious person." Siege was speechless for a while and sighed. When the water is too clear, there will be no fish. When people are shameless, they will be invincible. Don't talk nonsense. You know, the Kirin clan has a very important position among all the mythological beasts. In the past, King Kirin commanded the mythological beasts of our clans to fight against those ancient demonic beasts and ferocious beasts, so that they could not grow. This period is called the Era of the Ancient Beasts, and it ended after you humans appeared. Because Kirin would have relations with other races' mythological beasts, many descendants of the mythological beasts also inherited a small part of Kirin's bloodline to a certain extent. For example, modern dogs and horses have Kirin's bloodline, but it is so small that it is negligible. The reason why horses are called the most perfect animal is that they have the inheritance of Kirin's bloodline. However, among these descendants of Kirin's bloodline, the only one that maintains a strong racial system is our Siege family. Chiyu said, "So, we are still related by blood?" Siege said, "From a certain point of view, yes. Our ancestor was born from the mating of Kirin and an extinct mythological beast, horned centipede. Because the horned centipede and Kirin are somewhat similar in appearance, our Siege family is most similar to Kirin in appearance, but the shape of our horns, the color of our hair, and our own abilities are different." Chiyu said, "How much of Kirin's bloodline do you have? If you calculate it in percentage." Siege said, "Ordinary Siege has about 30% of Kirin's bloodline. As the king of Siege's bloodline, I have 50% of Kirin's bloodline. I am already the purest Siege. Unfortunately, we Siege only inherited a small part of Kirin's ability. Because our appearance is similar to Kirin, and our abilities are similar to Kirin's. In ancient times we received a lot of care from our ancestors, Kirin. Since then, my ancestors began to serve Kirin, making the Siege family the servants of the Kirin clan, but this secret is only known to the people of our two clans. We Siege have always been known for being upright and outspoken, which is why we have the title of Magic Beast in later generations. In the army of mythological beasts commanded by King Kirin, we Siege were the law enforcers." Chiyu thoughtfully said, "So that's how it is. No wonder I felt a sense of closeness and familiarity the first time I saw you. It should be because of the connection between our bloodlines." "Yes, it is the induction between our bloodlines. Perhaps it was arranged by God that I met you, the new King Kirin. As the king of the Siege family, the previous king of Siege would not serve ordinary Kirin, but only the king of Kirin. Unfortunately, there has been no appearance of King Kirin for thousands of years. I didn't expect to meet you. This is really my luck. This is the origin of the Kirin clan and the Siege clan." Chiyu said, "I understand the relationship between Kirin and Siege. Go on." "I fainted that day. What happened after that?" Siege said, "Don't rush. Let's do it this way. I'll start with the Qilin arm. After I finish introducing the Qilin arm, I'll tell you about the matter between us. You'll understand more easily. In fact, in ancient times, although Kirin was strong, he was not the strongest among the mythological beasts and magical beasts. For example, the ancient guardian beasts Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, Vermilion Bird, and some special mythological beasts and magical beasts had the strength to compete with Kirin. Some were even stronger than Kirin. However, Do you know why Kirin is always the king of mythological beasts and commands the army of mythological beasts? Chi Yu's heart skipped a beat and he said, "Is it because of Kirin's arm?" Xie said with satisfaction, "You are very smart. Yes, it is because of the existence of Kirin's arm that Kirin has always maintained the title of the king of mythological beasts. In fact, Kirin's arm is not the real Kirin's arm. It refers to Kirin's horn. Kirin has strong defense and attack power, and Kirin's horn is the strongest point of attack and defense. At the same time, it is also Kirin's only weakness." Wait, I am confused by what you said. Since it is the strongest, how can it be a weakness? Chi Yu asked doubtfully. Xie said, "There is no absolute strength and absolute weakness in the world. Under certain conditions, the strongest can become the weakest. Kirin's horn is Kirin's strongest attack. You are human, and the position of Kirin's horn is your right arm. Therefore, I will tell you that Kirin's arm is the strongest. When the Qilin fought with other divine beasts, magical beasts or ferocious beasts, the Qilin arm was the most advantageous weapon. Not only could it transform into any form of weapon, but it also had the strongest offensive and defensive power. The Qilin arm appearing in the firmament breaker was definitely not a lie. In fact, ordinary Kirin can only really launch an attack with Kirin's arm once in a lifetime. I am confused by what you said. Didn't you just say that Kirin's arm can transform into a weapon to attack? Why do you say that it can only attack once? Xie said, "Kirin's arm can be used for attack and defense at any time. However, no matter how hard Kirin cultivates, the ultimate power that can be exerted is at most 30% of Kirin's arm. What I am talking about is that Kirin can only launch Kirin's arm once in a lifetime. That will be a full blow, a blow that will show the full attack power of Kirin's arm. Such a blow indeed has the power to break the sky. From the birth of Kirin to the present, except within the Kirin clan, no other mythological beasts, magical beasts or ferocious beasts, no matter what level of cultivation, can resist the strongest blow of Kirin's arm. Because of this, even if there are ancient beasts that are stronger than Kirin, they will not dare to provoke Kirin. What they are afraid of is this Kirin's arm. There can only be one blow in a lifetime, then it won't be a mutual destruction, right? Chi Yu did not forget the word behind Kirin's powerful strength because of Xie description of it. Xie said with some bitterness, "You can say that. Because Kirin's arm is Kirin's horn. If Kirin's horn is broken, then Kirin will have to pay the price with his life. And the real perfect blow of Kirin's arm is at the cost of turning into a horn. The horned arm shone brilliantly, and the price of this perfect strike was the precious life of Qilin. Perhaps this was the limitation of strength. Since the birth of Kirin, the number of Kirin clan has never exceeded a single digit. There is always a price to pay for strength. And the perfect attack of Kirin's arm is naturally the most taboo method of mutual destruction in the Kirin clan. Unless it is a last resort, it will never be used. Today, you should have seen the power of Kirin's arm, but if I tell you that the attack only shows 1% of the power of Kirin's arm, what would you think? 1%. Chi Yu stuttered. Probably not yet. I said, Kirin's arm is Kirin's strongest ability. Xieji's voice was a little emotional. Chi Yu said doubtfully, "Since Kirin's arm is so strong, why didn't I hear Master Zagru mention it? And I heard that Kirin's previous generations were very weak and needed the protection of the Zodiac warriors. Is it because the blood of Kirin has been passed down in our human body that it has lost the ability of Kirin's arm? No, of course not. Due to the difficulty of reproduction of pure-blooded Kirin, the Kirin clan was on the verge of extinction in the later period of the ancient Almighty Beast era. In order to let the Kirin clan continue, Kirin decided to choose a race and pass down their pure-blooded bloodline. And the final result of the choice was the human race. Because the human race has a brain that is smarter than any other race, they have more creativity than any other race, although the human race was still very weak at that time. However, the king of Kirin saw the development of the human race. As it turns out, the king of Kirin's vision is farsighted. Now, our world completely belongs to you humans. Since the human race has inherited Kirin's pure-blooded bloodline, they will naturally have all of Kirin's abilities. The ascending Qilin technique imparted to you by the girl who inherited the dragon's bloodline was indeed the cultivation method of the Qilin. Even the ascending cloud technique, which the Zodiac warriors used to cultivate and fuse their inherited bloodline, was also derived from the ascending Qilin technique. However, the ascending Qilin technique that was passed down was only the cultivation method. The method to use it and trigger the bloodline fusion was lost. For the Zodiac warriors, this naturally doesn't affect them because they already have their own abilities. Kirin's cultivation method only allows them to make better use of their abilities. However, for Kirin who has inherited Kirin's bloodline, it is naturally impossible to display the true strength of Kirin without the method to use its abilities and trigger the bloodline fusion. Qi Yu's heart became hot. At this time, even the Sarira bead could not calm his agitated mood. Do you mean that you have these two cultivation methods? Xieji's voice became a little strange. It smiled and said, "No, I don't have these two cultivation methods. Although I have the bloodline of Kirin, as the most precious cultivation method of the Kirin clan, how can I have it? Only the real Kirin is likely to remember the real cultivation method." Qi Yu said, "Since you don't have it, what's the use of telling me this?" Xieji said, "Although I don't have it, there is someone who does." Qi Yu was stunned and said, "Who is it? Don't tell me there really is a Qilin left in this world?" Xieji said, "Yes, only Kirin has it. I said this cultivation method of the real Kirin, only the real Kirin can have it." Qi Yu frowned and said, "Since there is a real Kirin in this world, what's the use of me as a guardian?" "Idiot, the Kirin I'm talking about is you," Xieji said snappily. Qi Yu was stunned and said, "What? You said I have this cultivation method? How is this possible?" Xieji said, "You do have this cultivation method. Only the real Kirin can have it. It is in your bloodline. Only in your bloodline can the ancient cultivation method be passed down. You humans are ridiculous. They actually think that Kirin's cultivation speed is slower than them. When I felt this memory from your consciousness, I couldn't help but feel ashamed of your ignorance. The reason why Kirin can become the king of the mythological beasts and continue to rule the mythological beasts in the ancient era is because of Kirin's arm. At the same time, Kirin also has a cultivation speed that far exceeds other ancient mythological beasts. Let me ask you a simple question. Do you think it is strange that the ancient mythological beasts can survive to this day?" Qi Yu said, "What is strange about this? The life of you monsters is almost infinite." "No, you are wrong. This world is balanced. It is impossible for anyone to have eternal life and live until today. The older the mythological beasts, magical beasts, and ominous beasts, the greater the price they have to pay. Only by continuous cultivation and passing through one bottle opening after another can it be possible to extend their life. As we break through the bottleneck one after another, we will be able to possess even greater strength. But it is extremely difficult to break through the bottle opening. We must pay a lot of effort and suffer a lot of pain. Therefore, age can be said to be the standard to measure the strength of the ancient mythological beast. However, there is an exception. Chapter 18. Yes, it's Kirin. No matter what realm Kirin cultivated to, its lifespan could not exceed 1,500 years. This was the root cause of Kirin's extinction. However, in the limited 1,500 years of Kirin, as long as you work a little harder and concentrate on cultivation according to Kirin's cultivation method, you can become a super strong person in up to 500 years. It can even be comparable to a 10,000-year-old beast. In other words, Kirin's cultivation speed is 20 times that of other ancient beasts. The bloodline inherited by your Zodiac companions is actually passed down from the ancient beast. They can become strong through cultivation. As the inheritor of the mythological Beast King, why can't you? Chiyu was overjoyed. So, if I practice according to the real cultivation method, I can become a master in a short time? Xieji said, there is one thing I want to warn you in advance, it can be said to remind you. You have to remember the truth that the tallest tree in the forest will be cut down by the wind. Even if you become stronger in the future, you have to hide it as much as possible. Unless necessary, don't show it in front of others. Only by letting others underestimate you can you survive better or achieve your own goals more easily. Do you understand? Chiyu smiled and said, I understand. What you mean is to only say 30% of the truth to people you meet. Don't throw away all your heart, right? I like to eat tigers mixed with pigs. Xieji smiled and said, it's good that you understand. Today, I helped you to arouse the original power of Kirin's arm in Kirin's bloodline. I had no choice. Kirin's dignity cannot be violated. However, this situation can only happen once. In the future, you have to rely on yourself. Now, do you feel that your thundercloud force has disappeared? That's because Kirin's arm overdrew the energy in your body. It will take at least a month to recover. Of course, if you practice according to the right cultivation method, this time will be much shorter. If you want to really use Kirin's arm and the 9 words incantation, you have to put in more effort. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Didn't you ask why I ran into your body? I can answer you now. Why? Just because I inherited King Kirin's bloodline? You could say that, but that's not entirely true. Because you inherited the most powerful bloodline in the Kirin clan, the Kirin King's bloodline contains an extremely thick Kirin's origin power. In this origin power, there is also some of the Kirin King's consciousness left behind. That day, after I discovered your Kirin bloodline, I used my own bloodline as a guide to draw out King Kirin's remaining consciousness. With King Kirin's permission, I became your shadow. Therefore, I am now your servant. To be able to become the shadow of King Kirin was what all Xieji looked forward to the most. Because when King Kirin became really powerful, as King Kirin's shadow, he could change from an impure Xieji to a pure-blooded Kirin, and thus rise to the top of the Kirin clan. You don't have to worry about King Kirin's consciousness. His last consciousness could only tell me some things. Now it has completely dissipated. King Kirin's bloodline can now be said to belong to you alone. A strange feeling suddenly appeared in Chi Yu's heart. It was as if an abnormally warm emotion filled his body, just like a father comforting his son. He had never had any relatives since he was young, and this sudden feeling caused his heart to tremble. This was the first time he felt that the Qilin bloodline that he had inherited truly existed. The aura that gave him this fatherly feeling should have been left behind by the Qilin king. It is my honor to be the heir of King Kirin. Brother Xieji, thank you for telling me this. What about the shadow? If you become my shadow, how will it affect you and me? Xieji seemed to feel the emotional changes in Chiyu. Becoming your shadow is equivalent to sealing myself in your body. My aura, bloodline, and ability will be subtly influenced by your pure Kirin bloodline. Therefore, I can't help you fight against the enemy, nor can I be your guardian. However, by becoming your shadow, I can also enter your inner world and understand what has happened to you in the past. Although I only have one chance to understand you, this is already enough for me. After understanding you, I can impart the knowledge recorded in my heart to you based on your personality and physical condition. I can assist you in your cultivation and give you pointers on cultivation abilities and technique. Under special conditions, I can even stimulate your Qilin bloodline and help you use the true power of a Qilin. Kirin was weak when he was born to become strong after growing up. With the guidance of the shadow, it will inevitably play a role of twice the result with half the effort. It can be said that you and I are of one mind. For you and me, it will be of great benefit. My master, I have explained the ins and outs clearly. Do you still have any questions? Chi Yu shook his head. Thank you, Brother Xieji. I think I will become a qualified Kirin. Now I want to ask you to start teaching me the real method of cultivation. I want to make myself stronger as soon as possible. As Kirin, I don't want anyone to look at me like Jida. I want to become a real strong person. Good. Xieji roared excitedly in Qi Yu's heart. My words are not in vain. Then let's start now. Take off your shirt. Qi Yu took off his shirt, revealing his shoulders that were much wider than before. The real method of cultivation needs you to feel it yourself. When you have a mistake in your cultivation, I will give you advice. You concentrate. Next, I will help you stimulate the blood of Kirin so that you can feel the mystery of the method of cultivation. This is something that only you can see. As soon as the voice fell, a scorching stream of air rose from the dantian in Qi Yu's lower abdomen and rushed directly to Qi Yu's brain in a straight line. With the impact of the hot stream, the temperature of Qi Yu's body rose sharply. He vaguely heard a low roar. Then, Kirin appeared on his chest. The huge Kirin pattern from his chest to his back, from illusion to reality, clearly appeared on his skin. It had a black body, silver hair, and a horn with black and silver colors entangled. It was full of invisible dominance. The 4 magic clouds behind Kirin moved this time. The 4 magic clouds, which belonged to thunder, fire, water, and wind, respectively, appeared under Kirin's 4 limbs. Kirin stepped on the 4 clouds, and a layer of black and silver light gradually enveloped Qi Yu's body. The eyes of the Kirin pattern lit up. The black and silver light flashed and disappeared. At this moment, Qi Yu lost his perception of the outside world. He was surprised to find that he seemed to have entered another place. What appeared in front of him was a 3-dimensional and transparent Kirin's body. The huge Kirin's body rotated slowly. Although it was transparent, Qi Yu could see that the Kirin in front of him was exactly the same as the image on his body. Something strange happened. The ascending Qilin technique in Qi Yu's memory suddenly surged in his mind. Then, on the transparent Kirin's body, starting from the feet, 4 colors of purple, red, blue, and green appeared at the same time. The light did not rise as a whole, but turned into a state of silk threads, slowly climbing up along Kirin's limbs. The silk threads were not very complicated, but when the 4 colors of light gradually moved to Kirin's body, the 4 kinds of light threads intertwined with each other and gradually became chaotic. Qi Yu was confused as he watched. When the light of the 4 colors of silk threads covered Kirin's body, it returned to the starting point. Kirin's figure gradually dimmed. Kirin, who was originally on all 4s, stood up and turned into a human form. When he looked closely, Qi Yu found that it was actually himself. The 4 colors of silk threads appeared again, and the 8 extraordinary meridians of the human body gradually appeared. The 8 extraordinary meridians that appeared were exactly the same as what was recorded in the ascending Qilin technique. Just when Qi Yu was feeling strange, the human body gradually returned to the form of Kirin. The 4 colors of silk threads appeared again, but the 8 extraordinary meridians that appeared in the human body did not disappear. At this moment, Qi Yu suddenly had a glimmer of understanding because he remembered what Xieji had said. The ascending Qilin technique was indeed the cultivation method of Kirin. The human body and Kirin that alternated in front of him should be the method of the ascending Qilin technique and Kirin's bloodline fusion. Only by mastering this method of fusion could he stimulate the bloodline of Kirin in his body and cultivate according to the method of the ascending Qilin technique. The ascending Qilin technique was actually not a separate cultivation method. It was a method that stimulated the energy in Kirin's bloodline and was driven by the energy of the bloodline to carry out the cultivation method. After figuring this out, Qi Yu suddenly felt that his heart was suddenly clear. The seemingly chaotic meridians in front of him were no longer so untraceable. In the operation of the 4 colors of energy, it seemed to contain the truth of heaven and earth. Qi Yu's mind was attracted by this truth and could not extricate itself. Xieji's voice sounded again. What you see now is something that only you can see, but I can feel from your heart that you have figured something out. As your shadow, my ability can only let you see this scene 3 times. Therefore, you must firmly remember these within 3 times, and then you can start to cultivate. Today is the first time. Next, I will start to change. The method of using Kiran's ability is as important as the method of cultivation. You have to watch carefully. The constantly changing human figure and Kiran form in front of Chi Yu slowly disappeared. Then, 9 big words appeared in front of Chi Yu out of thin air. It was the 9 secret words of Lin, Bing, Do, Zhe, Jie, Zhen, Lai, Qian, and Xing. Then, another human figure appeared, but this time, the human figure was no longer static. The 9 big words were enlarged one by one, and when each word was enlarged, the human figure would have different changes. Even the meridians in the body were changing. Looking at everything in front of him, Chi Yu did not dare to have the slightest slack. Although he did not fully understand, he tried to firmly remember these in his heart. Immersed in the constantly flashing lights and shadows, Chi Yu did not know how long it took. When these lights and shadows finally disappeared, Xie Zhi's voice sounded again. Everything in front of him returned to normal. What Chi Yu saw was still his empty space. As the King of Kiran, Ink Kiran, in addition to the abilities I have mentioned, you also have 2 abilities that other Kiran cannot match. One is your self-healing ability. The Kiran clan's healing ability is very strong, and Ink Kiran is several times stronger than ordinary Kiran. In a sense, Ink Kiran is almost impossible to kill. Of course, this is after you have the real ability of Ink Kiran. Even now, your own healing ability is extremely strong after the real Kiran's blood is activated. The best part of this super healing ability is reflected in the application of Kiran's arm. I have already described the attack of Kiran's arm to you. Ordinary Kiran, the real Kiran's arm can only be used once in their life, because once they release all the energy of Kiran's horn, the horn will disappear, and their life will come to an end. However, Ink Kiran is an exception among all Kiran. With the super healing ability, although using the ultimate Kiran's arm will make Ink Kiran extremely weak, it will not die. Within a certain period of time, Ink Kiran's horn can be regenerated. Chi Yu's whole body trembled, and he said in amazement, "That is to say, no matter how strong the enemy Ink Kiran faces, as long as I release the ultimate Kiran's arm, I can kill the enemy completely, and my horn can also grow. Then, wouldn't I be invincible in the world? Why would I still need to practice?" Xie Zhi said, "Of course not. This world is a balanced world. Although the Ink Qilin was an expert among experts, it also had its own restraining effect. For people like you, who don't even have the basic abilities of Kiran, using the ultimate Kiran's arm can regenerate a horn, but it will take 500 years. You have to know that Kiran's lifespan is only about 1,500 years. The more powerful the Black Qilin was, the less time it would take for its horn to recover. In other words, compared to ordinary Kiran, after you use the ultimate Kiran's arm, the only difference is that you will not die. During the long period of time when you are weak, because all the self-healing ability is in Kiran's horn, your body will become very fragile, and you may be killed by creatures that are much weaker than you at any time. Therefore, whether it is Kiran or Kiran King, they will not easily use their Kiran's arm unless it is absolutely necessary. You must remember this. Although Chi Yu was a little disappointed, he had to admit that this was a balance of nature. He nodded and said, "What is the other special ability of Ink Kiran?" Xie Zhi said, "The other special ability is very mysterious. I only know it exists, but I don't know where it is manifested. After the birth of every Qilin king, there will always be this special ability. As far as I know, it seems that every generation of Qilin king will have a different special ability in this aspect. Only when you gradually become stronger through cultivation will you be able to experience it for yourself." Chi Yu took a deep breath and said, "So that's how it is. It seems that everything depends on my own effort." Sieji said, "You can't be too hasty in your practice. You have the blood of Kirin, which is equivalent to having the best qualifications that humans in the world can have. As long as you progress step by step, you will inevitably become the real king of those Zodiac guardian gods. I am going to sleep. In the future, unless you wake me up when you need me, I will not wake up. Do you need me to help you trigger the practice method in the blood next time you practice?" Chiyu shook his head and said, "There's no need for now. If I watch it 3 times in a row, I might have a deeper impression of it. However, no matter how deep my memory is, if I don't understand it, there will definitely be some loopholes. I want to cultivate for a period of time first, and when I encounter some confusion or questions during my cultivation, I will watch it a second time. This way, I will watch it with questions in mind. I believe that not only will my memory be deeper, I will also gain more from it." Sieji praised, "You are now working hard in the direction of Kirin. Goodbye, my master." Chiyu was lost in thought. He did not change his focus because of Sieji's departure. Now, his mind was full of the previous dreamlike memories. He searched these memories, sorted out the seemingly chaotic network, and thought about how he should practice. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking on the door woke Chiyu from his contemplation. He found that the sky outside was already bright. "Chiyu, you should go to class today." Ming Ming's voice came from outside the door. Chiyu jumped out of bed. His head suddenly felt a little dizzy, and he felt groggy. "Okay, I will come out now." He did not sleep last night, and most of the time was spent thinking and remembering. For a person who rarely thought, it was really a big burden. Putting on the clothes he had worn yesterday, Chiyu used all his strength to stretch his body before walking out of his room. The moment he stepped out, he smelled a fragrant aroma. Twitching his nose, he saw that a sumptuous breakfast had already been laid out on the table in the hall. Su Qing and Xinyun were already sitting there eating. Xinyun smiled and said, "Come and eat together." Chiyu quickly shook his head and said, "Forget it, I will go to the cafeteria to eat." As he said that, he quickly went to the bathroom to wash his face, took his books and left the dormitory. Looking at the figure of Chiyu leaving, Su Qing snorted and said, "What a coward. This guy doesn't even dare to eat with us." Xinyun said, "He looks quite honest. Was he scared by that treaty of yours yesterday?" Su Qing chuckled and said, "God knows he deserves it. Who asked him to come to our female dormitory to live?" "What treaty?" Ming Ming came out of the room and sat at the table and ate without any politeness. Su Qing told them about the treaty she wrote with Chiyu yesterday. The 3 girls looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. However, the meaning of their laughter was different. Ming Ming was laughing in her heart. Her 2 roommates actually treated Chiyu as an honest person. She was afraid that they would be in trouble in the future. After eating breakfast, Chiyu asked a few students in Qingbei University. Only then did he find the place where the philosophy class was held in this huge campus. The time that Ming Ming called him was very suitable. When he arrived at the class, he wasn't late. Because he was tired from thinking last night, today Chiyu didn't scan the classroom to see if there were any beauties. He casually found a seat at the back and sat down. He casually placed the book on the table and fell asleep. This classroom was very big, but there weren't many students. The lecture hall that could accommodate 200 students only had 30 students. After all, the number of people who chose the philosophy department was still very small. The arrival of this unfamiliar student, Chiyu, didn't attract the attention of others. After all, his appearance couldn't be said to be handsome, and there wasn't anything that was enough to attract people. The other students who had already arrived at the classroom were still chatting in low voices. No one paid attention to this guy who fell asleep as soon as he entered the classroom. The bell rang. When a 50-something-year-old male teacher walked in from outside, the classroom immediately became much quieter. Unfortunately, this bell that wasn't soft still didn't wake up Chiyu, who had already fallen asleep. Sleeping after eating is absolutely a wonderful thing. The curriculum of a university wasn't as rigid as it was in middle school. It wasn't as strict either. The teacher taught attentively. As for whether the students learned or not, the teacher generally didn't care much. After all, if you didn't study hard, it would be impossible to obtain enough credits to graduate. In a famous university like Qingbei, the quality of the students was generally very high. The teachers were also a bit more strict than other universities. The class began. The first 20 minutes were no different from usual. In the class, the teacher with the surname Li used his usual serious voice to teach the classical philosophy class. Just after 20 minutes had passed, an incongruous voice suddenly appeared in the class. Humph, puff, a clear snoring sound came from the back of the classroom. All the students were stunned for a moment. Immediately after, a burst of laughter came from the classroom. After all, Chi-Yu's snoring was really too standard. The cadence, the high and low notes were extremely wonderful. Especially that last blow, it was absolutely top-notch. Teacher Li's serious face immediately changed color. He hadn't encountered such a thing in many years. Being laughed at by the students was something that no teacher could tolerate. Almost without any hesitation, he threw the eraser in his hand. Worthy of being surnamed Li, this teacher Li had gloriously inherited the traditional skills of Little Li Flying Dagger. Right now, he wasn't alone. At this moment, Little Li Flying Dagger's soul was attached to his body. With the accuracy displayed, the eraser drew a beautiful parabola with a whistling sound and went straight for the owner of the snoring. Bang, without deviation, without a bit more or less, the eraser immediately smashed onto Chi-Yu's head. F*CK, fuck, who the F*CK is courting death. Almost subconsciously, Chi-Yu stood up fiercely with a face full of anger. No matter who it was, being woken up while sleeping soundly would definitely not be happy. What's more, Chi-Yu had always hated people disturbing his sleep. His ruffian nature was instantly displayed. When he stood up, he gradually became clear-headed. Somewhat at a loss, he looked at the lifeless gazes of the other students and the angry teacher Li who was trembling. Only then did he remember that he was in class. You. The teacher was already so angry that he couldn't speak. Chi-Yu scratched his head that was smashed and said awkwardly, "This teacher, I'm not scolding you. Just treat it as my fart." Teacher Li looked at Chi-Yu's expression of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water, and his entire body couldn't help but tremble. As a famous professor of Qingbei University's philosophy department, this was the first time he was scolded like this in class. "Get out of here and stand outside as punishment. After I finish class, I'll take you to the academic affairs office to deal with your problem." Chi-Yu shrugged his shoulders, picked up his book, and walked out without any reluctance to leave. He was too lazy to defend himself. Moreover, sleeping in class and scolding the teacher was indeed his fault. He more or less knew how to respect his teacher. When Chi-Yu just walked out of the classroom, he faintly heard that teacher Li say, "Scum, this kind of scum can actually enter Qingbei. This kind of scum who casually scolds people should." The little bit of guilt in his heart immediately disappeared after hearing these words. A cold light flashed through his eyes. He heavily closed the classroom door and leaned against the wall of the corridor. Scum, humph, I'm the scum of society. This teacher's quality doesn't seem to be much higher than mine. Thinking to hear, Chi-Yu curled his lips. With the sleepiness from before, he leaned against the wall of the corridor and continued to have his big dream. Chi-Yu's ability to sleep was indeed not bad. Although he still couldn't reach the stage where he could sleep while walking, he had already mastered the secret art of sleeping while standing when he was in middle school. Not knowing how much time had passed, he suddenly felt someone pat his shoulder, causing him to wake up from his sleep. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold, he immediately thought that it might be that teacher. The words that were at the tip of his mouth were immediately swallowed back, and he opened his eyes. Different from what he imagined, in front of him was not the teacher who smashed him with an eraser, but a beautiful and familiar face. The person who appeared in front of Chi-Yu was the beauty he met when he first entered Qingbei's school. At that time, he had intentionally knocked away her book. He didn't expect to meet her again here. The young girl's gaze fell on Chi-Yu's shoulder. Covering her mouth, she lightly laughed. "You can really sleep. Why are you standing here?" Chi-Yu followed the young girl's gaze and looked at his shoulder. He immediately felt a little awkward because there were obvious traces of saliva there. Clearly, it was left behind when he tilted his head to sleep. He helplessly shrugged his shoulders and said, "I was chased out by the teacher. What else can I do other than sleep? Senior sister, don't tell me you're also in the philosophy department. Why aren't you attending class?" The young girl lightly smiled. The elegant aura that her body emitted caused Chi-Yu's eyes to stare blankly. "I'm not in the philosophy department. Other than the philosophy department, this school building also has a foreign language department. Don't you know that?" "I really don't know. I just entered the school yesterday. Qingbei is so big. I'm afraid that it will still take some time to figure it out." The young girl said, "Then why are you standing outside as punishment? Today should be Teacher Li's class." Chi-Yu snorted and said, "Actually, it's nothing much. I'm just sleeping in class." He even said that he would bring me to the dean's office to deal with it. The young girl burst into laughter and said, "You! Qingbei is one of the best schools in our Yanwang Republic. You must pay attention in class. Sleeping isn't something you should be doing at this time." Not knowing why, when he heard the young girl's words, Chi-Yu suddenly felt a sense of closeness in his heart. He subconsciously nodded his head. The young girl in front of him today was still dressed in fresh clothes. Her long hair was combed into a ponytail. She wore a loose top and blue jeans. She looked especially comfortable. There wasn't a single trace of makeup on her face. Her entire body was filled with the aura of youth. What attracted Chi-Yu the most was the pair of smooth and slender legs that were wrapped in her jeans. Although they weren't as exaggerated as Modi's, they were very harmonious with exquisite curves. It was a pity that her loose top was rather loose and covered her buttocks. Rubbing his nose awkwardly, he said, "I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that I didn't rest well last night. I unconsciously fell asleep before class. This is the second time we've met. Senior sister, can you tell me your name now?" The young girl made a pondering expression and said with a smile, "All right, I'm called Wenwei. What about you?" "I'm called Chi-Yu. I'm a new student in the philosophy department. Didn't I just come to report yesterday? I still have to thank senior sister for telling me the location of the dean's office. Qingbei is really too big." Chi-Yu was secretly delighted. This young girl called Wenwei in front of him was the gentle and cheerful type that he liked the most. Furthermore, she was also a super beauty. Relatively speaking, she was much easier to approach. In terms of appearance, among all the girls that he had seen in Qingbei University, only Ming Ming could compare to her. Thinking till here, although Chi-Yu wasn't willing to admit it, Hai Ryue's appearance still appeared in his mind. If it wasn't for her bad character, Hai Ryue's appearance and figure would probably be a little better than Ming Ming and the Wenwei in front of him. Wenwei's elegance and gentleness made Chi-Yu's heart beat a little faster. Looking at her unconsciously revealing an intoxicated expression, he didn't notice that behind Wenwei's gentle gaze there was a trace of faint coldness. "I'll leave first. Class is about to end. You have to take the initiative to admit your mistake to the teacher. Don't do it again in the future." Just at this time, a person walked towards their direction from the corridor. Accurately speaking, it should be walking towards the classroom that Chi-Yu was in. Boss, why are you here?" The person who came was none other than Yan Xiaoi. Chi-Yu stared blankly for a moment and said, "I'm a student in the philosophy department. If I'm not here, where would I be? Don't tell me that you're also in the philosophy department." Yan Xiaoi helplessly shrugged his shoulders and said, "Aren't I in the philosophy department? Although he was talking to Chiyu, his gaze fell on Wenwei. His eyes immediately lit up. Hello, Teacher One. Are you going to class? Teacher One? Chiyu stared blankly. His gaze fell on Wenwei. Chapter 19. Wenwei smiled faintly and said, Hello, you seem to be late. Yan Xiaoyi scratched his head and said, I couldn't sleep well last night, so I woke up a bit late. The horn on his head was finally solved, and the identity of the Zodiac guardian warrior made him think for half the night, so how could he sleep well? You're really a teacher? Chiyu asked in surprise. Wenwei nodded. Then why didn't you explain when I called you senior sister? Chiyu suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. He didn't know why, but the first time he met Wenwei, and the second time today, made his heart palpitate. Wenwei smiled and said, You didn't call me wrong. Why should I explain? I'm a graduate of Qingbei University, and also a master's student there. You calling me senior sister is naturally correct. The loud bell signaling the end of class rang, and the originally quiet corridor suddenly became lively. The classroom door opened, and the old teacher walked out with a gloomy face. When he saw Yan Xiaoyi at the door, his face immediately darkened. Student Xiaoyi, you're late. I hope this is the last time. If you do it again, I'll give you a warning. Yan Xiaoyi hurriedly said, I'm sorry, Teacher Li, I know I was wrong. I'll pay attention next time. Actually, I like your class the most. Among all the professors in the philosophy department, I'm most interested in your class. Teacher Li's face immediately became better after being praised by him. Hello, Teacher Li. Wenwei flashed out from Yan Xiaoyi's side and nodded to Teacher Li. Seeing her, Teacher Li's face immediately melted like an iceberg and was filled with a smile. So it's Teacher One. As he said that, his eyes subconsciously swept over Wenwei's chest. Beast. Chiyu and Yan Xiaoyi cursed in their hearts at the same time. Wenwei smiled and said, I'm about to go to class and just happened to pass by. I heard from Chiyu that you punished him for sleeping in class. He just came to school and doesn't know the rules. Don't be angry with him. Just tell him to be careful next time. As she spoke, she gave Chiyu a look. Chiyu was not an idiot. Although he was unwilling, he still said, I'm sorry, teacher. I won't sleep next time. Teacher Li snorted and didn't even bother to look at Chiyu. He said, Forget it. For Teacher Wen's sake, I'll let you off this time. If there's a next time, I'll let the Academic Affairs Office punish you. Alright, you two can go in first. Chiyu glanced at Wenwei, and Wenwei nodded at him. Only then did he and Yan Xiaoyi enter the classroom. Vaguely, he heard Miss Li say to Wenwei in a very gentle tone, Miss One, I'll treat you to dinner when you're free. There's a new Western restaurant in front of the school. It's pretty good. Chiyu and Yan Xiaoyi looked at each other and saw the disdain in each other's eyes. The two of them unconsciously laughed. They walked to the back of the classroom and found a seat next to each other. Now that most of the students were out, there weren't many people in the classroom. Chiyu said unhappily, Isn't this considered enemies on a narrow road? Yan Xiaoyi said with a smile, If it was before yesterday, it would definitely be, but not now. Boss, why did you choose the philosophy department? Didn't anyone tell you that the philosophy department has the worst future? Chiyu asked in return, What about you? Why did you choose the philosophy department? Yan Xiaoyi laughed and said in a low voice, Of course it's to get a diploma. Generally speaking, the philosophy department has the least courses. My father brought me here, so of course I have to choose an easy subject. This way, I can free up a lot of time to promote the growth of the school's beauties. It's not bad to become a teacher after graduation. The students in the school are changing. If I become a teacher, I will have a lot of opportunities to pick up girls in the future. Chiyu laughed and said, Then aren't you the legendary animal teacher? Yan Xiaoyi jumped in fright and hurriedly looked around. Boss, can you lower your voice? I have a very good reputation in the school. Chiyu said, It seems that not only are we not enemies on a narrow road, but great minds think alike. Your thoughts are exactly the same as mine. Sigh, I thought I was the only smart person. Oh right, you came to the school earlier than me. Is that Wenwei really a teacher? Until now, he still didn't want to believe it was true. Yan Xiaoyi looked at Qiyu with some surprise. Boss, Earth is very dangerous. You should go back to Mars. F*CKU, cut the crap and tell me. Qiyu patted Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder hard. Yan Xiaoyi cried out in pain and said, Can you be gentler? Are you addicted to hitting me? I'll tell you, okay? The question you just asked is too weird. Wenwei is the most popular woman in the school. You don't even know her background. Shouldn't you go back to Mars? She is one of the two beauties of Tsinghua University. The other one is your Ming Ming. Qiyu was very satisfied with the words Ming Ming. He quickly pinched Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder twice and said, Didn't I just arrive at the school? Hurry up and tell me. Yan Xiaoyi said, Wenwei is one of the youngest female teachers in our school. She was admitted to Tsinghua University as the top scholar in the city. She studied in the Foreign Languages department. After graduation, she was directly sent to our school's postgraduate program. After the postgraduate program, with her knowledge, there were a lot of multinational companies that wanted to hire her. But for some reason, she rejected all the offers and chose to stay in Tsinghua University as an ordinary foreign language teacher. Therefore, she has always occupied the position of Tsinghua University's #1 beauty. This year, after Ming Ming entered the school, she became a threat. Teacher Wen's identity is a mystery. No one has ever seen her family, and she has no friends. Don't look at how gentle she looks on the surface. In fact, she is famous for being warm on the outside but cold on the inside. She can invisibly push people 1,000 miles away. Don't know how many male compatriots who chased after her were tactfully rejected, but no one said anything bad about her. In Tsinghua University, no matter in the eyes of students or teachers, she is a heaven's proud daughter. Boss, how do you know her? Qiyu took a deep breath. After listening to Yan Xiaoyi's introduction, he couldn't help but be more curious about Wenwei. She doesn't have friends? How could that be? Looking at her gentle appearance, she should have a lot of friends. Yan Xiaoyi smiled bitterly and said, I don't know about this. I once specially looked for people to inquire about her, but there wasn't any valuable information. I didn't even find out what she likes. She treats everyone very well, as if everyone is her friend. But there isn't a single person who dares to say that they understand her. It's really strange. Ming Ming is a student in her class. After you go back, you can ask Ming Ming. I heard that Ming Ming's relationship with her is not bad. Maybe you can ask something. Qiyu looked at Yan Xiaoyi vigilantly and said, You can't be interested in Wenwei, right? Yan Xiaoyi smiled and said, Such a beauty, I'm afraid any man will be interested in her. However, boss, you can rest assured. Although I have always thought that I am very handsome, I don't have any confidence in this kind of unfathomable beauty. If you have the ability, you can do it yourself. It can also be considered as fighting for us men. However, I estimate that the hope is very small. A light flashed in Qiyu's eyes. Small hope doesn't mean no hope. Maybe there are too many handsome guys chasing after her. What if I, who has temperament, can move her heart? Temperament. Yan Xiaoyi almost choked on his own saliva. He coughed twice and said, Yes, yes, you have temperament. Then you better pray for the best. Sleep, sleep. After saying that, he directly lied down on the table. Qiyu was stunned for a moment and said, You are actually going to sleep in class? The next class is probably going to start soon. Yan Xiaoyi smiled and said, You are unlucky. I think in the whole school, only that guy oldly hates students sleeping. The other teachers rarely care about this. As long as you don't disturb the order of the class, those professors are too lazy to control you. That wretched guy oldly will only be gentle with beautiful girls. He is unspeakably strict with us students. Alright, I am going to sleep. Qiyu cursed in his heart, I am going to sleep too. There were indeed few classes in the philosophy department. For example, today there was only a class in the morning. During the morning class, Chi-Yu only heard a few words from Teacher Lee. The rest of the time was spent sleeping. After lunch, Chi-Yu directly went back to the dormitory. Last night, he just learned the real Kirin's cultivation method. He was still excited and wanted to quickly practice it to see the effect. Walking to the door of the dormitory, Chi-Yu suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. He thought that if he could see Su Qing and Shen Yun, the two beauties, as a lesbian again, it would be wonderful. While thinking, he gently opened the door with the key, trying not to make a sound. However, this time Chi-Yu was disappointed. There was not even a shadow in the dormitory. The three beauties were not there. Just as he was about to return to his room, he suddenly saw a white thing fluttering in the wind on the balcony outside the living room. Under the influence of curiosity, he subconsciously walked over. When Chi-Yu saw what was on the balcony, his first action was to cover his nose. In fact, if it was another person, as long as it was a man, his action would be similar. After all, when a normal man, and a virgin at that, saw several pieces of lingerie exclusive to women, he would probably feel his blood boil. Once it came out of his nose, he would probably die from excessive blood loss. On the balcony, there were a few white panties fluttering in the wind. There were also 2 bras. No matter who it would inevitably cause Chi-Yu's blood to boil. Especially those panties were actually thongs. It looked too tempting. Just as Chi-Yu was hesitating whether to take a closer look or not, the sound of the door opening suddenly sounded. Thieves usually had a guilty conscience. Although Chi-Yu wasn't really a thief, he was still shocked and hurriedly ran back to his room. Just as Chi-Yu walked to the door of his room, the 3 beauties had already arrived in the living room. Su Qing saw Chi-Yu at a glance. "Hey, you're back quite early." Chi-Yu struggled to keep calm. "Yes. I came back after eating." "You didn't eat in the dormitory?" Ming Ming said, "There was a new Western restaurant at the school gate. We went to try it. We wanted to call you, but your philosophy department is too far away from our foreign languages department and Sister Yun's physics and thermodynamics department, so we didn't wait for you and went by ourselves. That restaurant is really good." Su Qing said, "It's really good. Shouldn't some new residents express their gratitude and invite us 3 beauties to find an opportunity to eat there again? Western food?" Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment. He thought to himself, that stupid thing is not enough to eat, and it's frighteningly expensive. If I really go there, I'm afraid my 1 month's relief money will be gone. He hurriedly pretended not to understand the meaning of Su Qing's words and said, "What's so good about Western food? It's not as good as our Yanhuang's 5,000 years of food culture. I still prefer Yanhuang cuisine." Su Qing pursed her lips, and Shen Yun said, "Did you hear the announcement when we passed by the school cafeteria on our way back? The school temporarily announced a new rule about the cafeteria, saying that staple food will no longer be provided for free in the future. It seems to be calculated by Caddy." Su Qing said with a smile, "Of course I heard it. I also know why there is such a rule. I heard that last night, a rice bucket went to the school cafeteria and ate more than 10 bowls of rice in one go. Moreover, it was a big lunchbox that weighed half a caddy. As a result, the school cafeteria was afraid of eating that much. The main reason was that many people saw him eat and felt that it was too delicious, so they ate a lot more. As a result, the number of staple food in the cafeteria greatly increased. That rice bucket is really strong. Think about it, it's really hard to imagine that a person can eat 5 or 6 caddies of staple food." Ming Ming giggled and said, "Could it be that he was the reincarnation of a hungry ghost?" "Qing, isn't your gossip a little inaccurate? How can anyone eat so much?" Su Qing pouted and said, "How could that be? My source is very reliable, it's definitely true. I heard that he went again at noon today, and there were many people who also went to the cafeteria to eat with the intention of seeing a rice bucket. In the end, the staple food consumption at noon today was even more terrifying than last night, so the school issued a temporary rule. Why? It's really the heavens that want me dead. Chiyu cried out in sorrow. F***ck. No wonder there were more people in the cafeteria at noon today. Ming Ming looked at Chiyu curiously. She seemed to suddenly think of something, and her eyes widened as she said, That rice bucket can't be you, right? Chiyu said in grief and indignation, What rice bucket? Ching Bei is too unkind. Do I eat a lot? I only ate a total of 14 steamed buns at noon today, and the rules have actually changed. It's over, I won't even have enough to eat in the future. 3 beautiful women, 6 pairs of bright big eyes blankly fell on Chi-Yu's flat stomach. They naturally knew how big the steamed buns at school were. They were big steamed buns that weighed half a caddy each. 14 of them was 7 caddies. A person eating 7 caddies of steamed buns, was he still human? Chi-Yu had a bitter face. Don't look at me. I don't know why, but recently my appetite has increased, and I eat a lot more than before. Could it be that eating a lot is also a sin? Su Qing's gaze turned to Ming Ming. A rice bucket who can eat 7 caddies in one meal, you say he has congenital heart disease? Ming Ming said with some embarrassment, Eating and heart disease don't affect each other. Besides, I didn't know he could eat so much. Perhaps eating a lot is a kind of disease. As she said, she hurriedly winked at Chi-Yu, telling him to quickly return to his room. Chi-Yu was now completely immersed in the flying steamed buns and rice, and didn't notice Ming Ming's winking. He said with a bitter smile, It's over, my relief fund is definitely not enough to eat this time. Relief fund? What relief fund? Shin Yun asked curiously. Chi-Yu was stunned and hurriedly said, Nothing, I'm going back to my room. He walked back to his room and closed the door. He really had to think of a way to solve the problem of eating, but he didn't want Shin Yun and Su Qing to know that he was living on the state's relief fund. Looking at the closed door, Shin Yun and Su Qing's curious gaze fell on Ming Ming. Ming Ming's heart moved, and suddenly thought of a way to deal with it. She hurriedly said, Cousin indeed relies on the relief fund to live. When he was very young, both his parents died, and he relied on the state's relief fund to survive. Originally, we all wanted to help him, but he has a stubborn temper. Apart from the state's subsidy, he didn't receive any help from his relatives, so naturally, he doesn't have much money. Eating in the school cafeteria, naturally, he can only eat staple food. There's no oil in his stomach, so it's normal to eat more staple food. Su Qing was stunned for a moment. No wonder he refused to eat in the dormitory. I thought Sister Yun's food didn't attract him, so it was like this. He's so pitiful. How could I say that to him yesterday? Shin Yun said, Qing what did you say to him yesterday? Su Qing smiled bitterly. I asked him to share the rent, and then I asked him to pay 500 yuan a month for food expenses. Later, he agreed to pay the rent, but he refused to eat with us. So it's so difficult for him. I thought he was Ming Ming's cousin, so his family should be rich. Moreover, his clothes are also branded. Ming Ming's face sank. His clothes were just given to him by one of my sisters. If you saw what he used to wear, you wouldn't say that. Hearing Ming Ming's words, Su Qing suddenly thought of a poor child studying hard to get into a top university. She lowered her head and said, I'm sorry, Ming Ming. I didn't know. Ming Ming frowned. Qing do you know how much Chi-Yu's monthly relief fund is? I heard from him that it should be around 600 yuan. After sharing the rent, I'm afraid he won't have much money left. Not to mention that he also smokes. In the past, he told me that sometimes there's no free food. Of course, we're roommates, so it's normal for you to ask him for food expenses. But how much can we eat in a month? It's more than enough for the 3 of us, and we don't even need to use it. If you ask him for 500 yuan, he naturally won't agree because he can't afford it. Speaking up to this point, Ming Ming became a little emotional. Let him eat in the dormitory in the future. I'll pay for his food expenses. Ming Ming, don't be angry. Qing was just joking. You didn't say that we didn't know that Qi Yu was in such a difficult situation. Xin Yun saw that the atmosphere wasn't right and immediately tried to smooth things over. While the three women were outside, Qi Yu's face was full of smiles. Naturally, he wasn't smiling because Ming Ming said that she would pay for his food expenses, but because the three women misunderstood him. It seemed that Xin Yun and Su Qing had already treated him as a pitiful person. It was the right move to play the pity card, and it would be easier for him to get close to them in the future. While fantasizing about what might happen with the two women, Qi Yu couldn't help but feel a little complacent as he puffed out a cloud of smoke. After smoking a cigarette, the noise outside had already disappeared. Only then did Qi Yu remember that it was time for him to train. He pulled the curtains in the room and sat cross-legged on the bed. After sleeping in class for the whole morning, he was now much more energetic. Based on everything in his memory, he fumbled around and started Kirin's real training for the first time. Energy fluctuations gradually emerged from Qi Yu's body. Among the Kirin skills that he barely remembered yesterday, he chose an intermediate skill as the first one to train. Every skill that Kirin had was inseparable from Thundercloud Force. Thundercloud Force was the foundation, and the skills were the way to use it. Therefore, no matter what, he had to start from the ascending Qilin method. However, because he had the method to fuse Kirin's bloodline and Thundercloud Force, his training method was somewhat different from the previous inheritors of Kirin. When he really began to train, Qi Yu was surprised to find that training was not as boring as he had imagined. During the process of training, he felt the constant changes in his body's bloodline and aura due to training, and the comfort brought by his body was actually very wonderful. Moreover, during the process of training, he could clearly feel that the Kirin aura in his body was extremely powerful. However, this aura was immersed in his own Kirin's bloodline. If he wanted to draw out this aura and fully use it, he needed to constantly train and integrate this Kirin aura with his own bloodline little by little. Only in this way could he truly master the profound meaning of Kirin. Another thing that made Qi Yu excited was that during the process of training ascending Qilin method, his perception of the outside world would completely disappear. His consciousness would be immersed in a special space. His body was practicing ascending Qilin method, and his consciousness was pondering the training method and the characteristics of those Kirin skills. He asked Xie why such a situation occurred, and Xie's answer was very simple. This was not because he had the ability to multitask, but because when the body entered the correct state of training, the mind would be liberated, and the body would be in a semi-dormant state. However, the spirit did not need to be. The awake spirit entered his own inner sea of consciousness because of the body's dormancy. In this case, thinking would not be disturbed by the outside world, and it was often more efficient than usual. Xie was also very surprised. It was deeply shocked by the talent of Kirin. Before Qi Yu officially began to train, it did not expect that Qi Yu could find the real training method so quickly. Although it was a little rough, and although it was just the beginning, as a Kirin, a good start was definitely the key to success. When Qi Yu woke up from the state of training, the sky outside had already darkened. He did not wake up from his own training, but because the knocking on the door had aroused his remaining consciousness in his body, so he stopped after completing a cloud cycle of training. "Who is it?" Qi Yu asked. After an afternoon of training, he did not feel much except that his body was comfortable. Xie's explanation was very simple. That day, he used some of the abilities of Kirin's arms, and it consumed too much of his energy. Even if he found the right training method, he had to first replenish the overdrawn Thundercloud Force before he could feel his 4 attributes of Thundercloud Force again. "It's me." Surprisingly, the person who came was not Ming Ming as Qi Yu had imagined, but Su Qing's voice. Qi Yu got out of bed. He did not take off his clothes when he was training. When he opened the door, he saw Su Qing standing awkwardly outside the door. Su Qing had changed her clothes. Her home clothes looked very loose, and the pink clothes brought her a bit of charm, making her original hot personality a lot more restrained. "What's the matter?" Su Qing glanced at Chiyu. She found that Chiyu's expression had not changed since noon. She could not help but secretly feel relieved. "Come and eat. Sister Yun is ready." Chiyu laughed in his heart, but on the surface he said calmly, "No need, I will go to the cafeteria to eat." Su Qing smiled a little proudly and said, "I knew you would say that, but don't you see what time it is now? The cafeteria has long been closed. When I came back from class in the afternoon, I saw that your room's curtains were still closed. I knew you were sleeping, so I deliberately didn't wake you up. Let's see how you can refuse now. Come on, I don't want your food expenses." As she said, she unceremoniously pulled Chiyu's sleeves and pulled him to the living room. As soon as he came out of the room, Chiyu smelled a fragrance. He could not help but subconsciously swallow a mouthful of saliva. There were at least 7 or 8 dishes on the table in the living room. It was absolutely beautiful and fragrant. As for the taste, it could only be known after tasting it. There was also a big bamboo basket with more than 10 big steamed buns. It seemed that they were bought from the school cafeteria. Ming Ming and Shin Yun were already sitting there. Seeing Chiyu come out, Ming Ming hurriedly said, "Come and eat. In the future, you can eat in the dormitory. Don't go to the cafeteria." How can the cafeteria's big pot of rice compare to Sister Yun's cooking? As for your food expenses, of course, you still have to pay, but I can lend it to you first. When you start working in the future, you can return it to me. Looking at the eyes of the 3 women, Chiyu suddenly felt his heart warm up. He sighed inwardly. So the feeling of being cared for was so wonderful. The 3 women were wearing home clothes, but strangely, Chiyu did not have the slightest vulgar thought in his heart. He felt that this was not a dormitory, but a home, a warm home. Without saying anything, Chiyu sat down. "Thank you. I will definitely find a way to earn some money to pay for the food expenses as soon as possible." As a man, although the 3 women had good intentions, how could he do something like live off a woman? He had hands and feet, how could he really starve to death? Just as Chiyu was about to start eating, there was a sudden knock on the dormitory door. Su Qing exclaimed and said, "Who could it be? Usually, no one comes here." She had not yet sat down, so she went to open the door. With a mournful scream, Chiyu was so frightened that the steamed bun that he had just grabbed fell into the plate. The fastest to react was Ming Ming. She rushed to the door with Chiyu following closely behind. Su Qing was so frightened that she almost fell to the ground. The person at the door was also shocked by her scream. A teasing voice sounded, "Am I that handsome? You don't have to be so surprised, are you master's wife?" When Chiyu saw the person at the door, he immediately frowned. The person who came was none other than Ming Ming's big brother, Jida. No wonder Su Qing had such a big reaction. It was already dark outside, and Jida was taller than the dormitory door. Suddenly seeing a guy with only half a head and an unusually strong body, anyone would be shocked. Today, Jida was wearing ordinary casual clothes, but even so, the invisible aura he emitted was still very shocking. Jida lowered his head and walked in. Su Qing was patting her chest and gasping for breath. "Who are you? Don't you know this is the female dormitory?" Jida was stunned. He looked at Chiyu next to him and said in surprise, "Master, isn't this master's wife?" Chiyu found it funny and said, "Mother your head, what are you doing here?" Su Qing looked at Chiyu with an unfriendly expression. "Give me an explanation. I remember telling you yesterday that you are not allowed to bring outsiders here." Chiyu shrugged and said, "It has nothing to do with me. He is Ming Ming's big brother." Su Qing and Shin Yun, who was walking over, revealed a shocked expression. Su Qing murmured, "No way. How could Ming Ming have a brother who looks like a gorilla?" Hearing her words, Chiyu could not help but burst into laughter. Jida, who had been feeling good about himself, immediately put on a bitter expression. "That can't be, Beauty. I'm so handsome, tall and mighty. You actually said that I look like a gorilla? Ming Ming giggled and said, let me introduce you. Brother, this is Su Qing, and this is Sister Shen Yun. They are my roommates, not your master's wife. This is my brother, Jida. Jida sniffed and said, how fragrant. You guys haven't started eating yet. It just so happens that I haven't eaten either. Chiyu was speechless. He thought to himself, could it be that the thickness of one's skin is proportional to the strength of one's body? At this time, Shen Yun had already recovered from her shock. She smiled and said, since you are Ming Ming's brother, please come in. They returned to the hall. Jida didn't seem to know the meaning of politeness. He sat down on Chiyu's seat and looked at the table full of delicious food. He couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Brother, why are you here? Ming Ming asked curiously. Jida said, I came to see my master and also to see you. Su Qing finally understood what Jida meant by calling her master's wife. Her face turned red and she said, he is your master? What did he teach you? Jida was stunned for a moment and quickly said, of course it's martial arts. My master is very powerful. Chapter 20. Chiyu smiled bitterly. Jida's mind was definitely not as rough as his appearance. He glanced at his sister and hurriedly said, there's no conflict. Although I'm master's cousin, I'm also his disciple. Who asked my master to be so powerful? Chiyu was a bit depressed. This is the school. Why did you come here? I don't need you to look at me. Moreover, I didn't agree to be your master. Jida smiled bitterly. Master, please accept me. It's been a long time since I've met someone like you who can make me so sincerely convinced. Chiyu snorted. What's in it for me to accept you as my disciple? I can consider it if you pay some apprenticeship fees. Jida was stunned. Apprenticeship fees? Master, how can an expert like you be tainted with the stench of money? I know. You must be joking with me. Who's joking with you? Don't experts need to eat? I, your master, can't eat my fill. Jida looked at the sumptuous dishes on the table and laughed. Master, so you've already accepted me. Only then did you realize the mistake in his words. Picking up the bun from before, he forcefully took a bite and said, it's not a big deal to accept you. My requirements aren't high either. I'll accept you as my apprentice fee of 3,000 a month. But don't expect me to teach you anything. Jida was stunned. Seeing that Chiyu didn't seem to be joking, he said, I really have to pay 3,000 yuan a month. Well, with master's ability, it's worth it. I'll pay, okay? No matter what, my monthly allowance is tens of thousands. Chiyu was surprised. Soldiers nowadays have such a high salary? I'll join the army. Jida said happily, good. I'm afraid any army would fight for a talent like master. Actually, the allowance isn't high. It's just that the army I'm in is a bit special, so it's a bit higher. Chiyu stretched out his right hand, pinched his thumb, index finger, and middle finger together and said, then give it to me. I'll pay for a month first. Ming Ming frowned and said, Chiyu, why did you plot against my brother? Chiyu said proudly, how can this be called scheming? He insisted on taking me as his master, so why can't I take him as my disciple and ask for some salary? One of us is willing to take the hit and the other is willing to take the hit. Jida said, yes, I'll give it to you. However, master, I don't have it with me. I'll give it to you next time. Look, the dishes are getting cold. Let's eat first. Shen Yun looked at them meaningfully and said, that's right. Let's eat first. Chiyu finally showed everyone his super strength. Of course, it was on the dining table. Jida had always thought that he could eat a lot, but when he ate the second bun, he saw that Chiyu had already picked up the fifth bun. Chiyu didn't look like he was eating, but like he was fighting a war. His two hands and his mouth. Ever since Shen Yun said that it was time to eat, he had never been idle. He didn't even have the time to talk, as if he was afraid that someone else would eat him. When all the food on the table was swept clean, Jida showed an expression of understanding and said, "Master, I finally know why you're asking me for my salary. With your appetite, an ordinary family wouldn't be able to feed you." Chiyu laughed and said, "I'm not full yet. It's all because of you, you rice bucket. You stole a lot of my food." The three girls at the side were all speechless. Not full yet? It must be known that this master and disciple pair had cleaned at least 80% of the food on the table, and Chiyu had eaten 50 to 60%. That was definitely the amount of food that three people could eat. Shen Yun and Su Qing began to clean up the dishes. Originally, Chiyu wanted to help, but he was stopped by Shen Yun. She only said one sentence, but it made Chiyu's heart filled with emotion. Shen Yun said, "How could a man do this kind of work?" It was a simple sentence, but it fully displayed the gentleness of a good wife and loving mother. In Chiyu's eyes, she immediately rose another level. Ming Ming pulled Jida and called out to Chiyu to return to her room. Jida's sudden arrival filled her heart with doubt, but she couldn't ask too much in front of Shen Yun and Su Qing. After all, whether it was Chiyu or Jida, their identities needed to be kept secret. Closing the door behind her, Ming Ming leaned on the door and said to Jida, "Brother, why are you here? Aren't you going to report to the Special Forces? Don't tell me that you're really here to see us." Jida said in a low voice, "I've already reported. I'm really here to see you. But there's something else I need to tell you." Chiyu sat on the chair beside Ming Ming's bed. "What is it?" Jida said, "After I reported to the Special Forces, I thought about it carefully. Originally, I thought that my strength was enough, but after seeing Master's ability, I felt that I was still far from being an elite in the Special Forces. So I went back to discuss it with the old man. Originally, I didn't want to enter the Special Forces, but the old man didn't agree to it. However, Grandpa didn't agree. He still let me enter the Special Forces first. However, he also gave me a mission. It's also my only task in the Special Forces at present. You Guardians of the East are powerful and mysterious for our military. The task that the old man gave me is to be responsible for contacting you. Master, you're the king of the Zodiac Guardians, so I'll directly look for you in the future." A trace of understanding appeared in Ming Ming's eyes. "So that's how it is. But I've already told Dad that our Zodiac Guardians haven't been formed yet. Not only are we lacking in numbers, but our strength is also not enough to help the country." Jida said snappily, "Not enough? Master, you can easily destroy me with a punch. If this kind of ability is not enough, how strong do you need? It's not like you don't know that your brother has a sapphire medal in the army." Chiyu's eyes lit up and said, "Sapphire medal? Is it worth a lot of money?" He was already considering whether or not he should get something good from his new disciple. Jida said proudly, "The sapphire medal represents the highest honor of the Special Forces, and is the representative of combat effectiveness. In the army, the highest level is the diamond medal, followed by the ruby medal and then the sapphire medal. With my strength, if it weren't for my young age and insufficient contributions, it would be enough to wear a ruby medal. Master, these three kinds of medals are the highest pride of us soldiers." Chiyu rolled his eyes and said, "That's good. Give me one another day. I want a diamond one." Jida was stunned and said, "Diamond? Master, a diamond medal is not an ordinary thing. It seems that there are only 3 people in the country who can have a diamond medal. All 3 of them had extremely mysterious identities. Not only had they made great contributions to the country, but they were also extreme-grade powerhouses. It can be said that they are the national treasures of our Yanhuang Republic. However, with your strength, if you can contribute more to the country, you may really be able to get a diamond medal. At that time, your apprentice will also benefit from your glory." Chiyu said with a smile, "Well, did you come here to tell us this? Now that you're done, you can go. Don't come here if you have nothing to do. As for us contributing to the country, we'll talk about it later." It wasn't that he didn't want to contribute to the country. On the contrary, Chi-Yu had received the country's aid since he was young, so he had deep feelings for his country. However, he was very clear about his current strength. Not to mention Jida, he was still far from Ming Ming. Without strength, how could he contribute to the country? Jida said with some grievance, "Master, it's not easy for me to come here. Can you teach me some secret arts or something? You are the first official master that I have acknowledged." Chi-Yu was stunned and couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. "Teach you? I don't know who to teach me. Didn't I just say that it's not difficult to recognize you as my apprentice? However, I really have nothing to teach you. What I practice is not something you can learn. Kiran's secret art only belonged to Kiran. Without Kiran's bloodline, how could he practice it?" Jida said with dissatisfaction, "Master, a super master like you must know a lot of things. Do you think I'm not sincere enough? How about I go to get the money now and pay the tuition fee for you?" Looking at Jida's eager face, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Just now when he agreed to accept him as his apprentice, in fact, Chi-Yu just felt that it was fun, and it didn't seem to be a bad thing to accept such a powerful apprentice. However, when it came to teaching him secret arts, Chi-Yu was really in a dilemma. By the side, Ming-Ming said, "Brother, stop fooling around. Go back first. Chi-Yu really has nothing to teach you. Although I don't know what happened to his strength that day, I know very well that he is actually not strong. Can't you feel that there isn't a strong energy fluctuation in his body?" Jida said stubbornly, "That's because Master has already cultivated to the realm of returning to simplicity. People like us naturally can't feel it. Master, you really have to accept me as your apprentice. No matter what you teach me, I will definitely learn it seriously. I can also endure hardship." Listening to Jida's words, Chi-Yu's mind flashed, and he immediately thought of a way. "All right, if that's the case, I will give you a clear path. I really don't have anything to teach you. However, I can find someone to teach you something." Jida said with some disappointment, "Master, I only want to learn from you. If you find someone who isn't as good as me to teach me, then what's the point of learning?" Chi-Yu chuckled and said, "Not as good as you? I don't think so. He is my master. Could it be that your master's master is not as good as you? You should be proud that I invited your grandmaster to teach you the skills of another generation." Hearing this, Jida immediately became spirited. "Grandmaster? Is Grandmaster a legendary hermit master?" Chi-Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Think what you want. Let's go, I will bring you there now. Don't bother me in the future. If you want to learn martial arts, go find your grandmaster directly. Ming Ming, let's go together." Ming Ming's eyes revealed a puzzled look. Hai Ryue had already conducted a sufficient investigation on Chi-Yu, so Ming Ming naturally obtained detailed information on Chi-Yu from her. However, she didn't hear that he had a master. Her brother was not an ordinary person. It was not easy to find someone who could be his master. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, "Where do you want to go?" Chi-Yu said, "This place is where you brought me, it's where the Shiti Rex is." Ming Ming widened her eyes and said, "Don't tell me you want Sister Ryue to teach my brother. You should know that it's impossible. Also, I didn't hear that you have Sister Ryue as your master." Chi-Yu said with a smile, "Of course not her. She wants to be my master? That's impossible. Let's go, you will know when we get there." When he thought of Hai Ryue's cold face, he felt an indescribable discomfort in his heart. Hai Ryue was the first beauty that made him feel disgusted. Doing what he said was always the style of a soldier. Jida couldn't wait to go out with Chi-Yu and Ming Ming. He still drove his off-road vehicle. Ming Ming pointed the way, and Jida drove like it was flying towards the Dragon Qian courtyard. At this time, the sky was already dark. All kinds of neon lights were constantly flashing brilliantly on the streets of the capital. The streets were bustling with people. For many people who had a rich nightlife, the most exciting time of the day had just begun. After becoming a master, Chi Yu's treatment suddenly improved a lot. This time, Jida took the initiative to let him be the front passenger seat, and Ming Ming sat alone in the back. The off-road vehicle sped towards the destination. When they arrived at the Dragon Qian courtyard, Chi Yu was already a little sleepy. Even he himself didn't know why. Ever since Master Zagru awakened his Kirin bloodline, he often felt sleepy, and his appetite had greatly increased. Although he ate a lot in the past, compared to now it was really too different. For this matter, he asked Xie. After thinking about it, Xie told him that this situation might be because his Kirin bloodline needed a lot of rest and nutrients to fuse with his body. He had to eat more nutritious things to supplement his body. Unfortunately, Chi Yu was very poor. It was good enough to eat his fill, let alone nutrition. Master, we're here. This place is very big. Well, the geographical location is not bad, and there seems to be radar fluctuations. How come I didn't know there was such a place before? The identity of the owner of this place must be extraordinary. As he spoke, Jida jumped out of the car, walked a few steps to the front door, and carefully looked around the door. At this time, his eyes had become extremely sharp. Chi Yu and Ming Ming came to Jida's side, only to hear him muttering to himself, "This is a special defense door from lace, made with a special process of titanium alloy. My God! This owner is too rich, the price of titanium alloy is definitely not cheaper than gold. The signal here feels like the Ross United Nations Gauss radar, even a fly can't escape its scanning. This radar is military equipment and it's very advanced." Chi Yu said impatiently, "All right, stop showing off. Ming Ming, you come." Ming Ming smiled slightly, stepped forward, and repeated what she did when she brought Chi Yu here. The door opened and the three of them walked into the Dragon Field courtyard. At this time, Hai Ryue had already walked out of the huge villa in the courtyard, Uncle Zhou beside her. Hai Ryue was still so beautiful, but the expression on her face had not changed. Perhaps because it was already night, she was wearing a simple casual outfit, and overall, she looked a little softer. The auras of the strong always attracted and repelled each other. As soon as Hai Ryue appeared, her eyes met Jida's. It was as if 4 bolts of cold lightning had collided in the air, and the two of them snorted at the same time. Hai Ryue's face paled, and Jida took half a step back, both showing a hint of surprise. Naturally, Ming Ming knew Hai Ryue's temper. Afraid that she would misunderstand, she quickly ran forward and said, "Sister Ryue, this is my brother." Hai Ryue's temper was indeed the same as before. Hearing this, she could not help but say coldly, "Ming Ming, don't you know that I don't welcome outsiders here?" Ming Ming stuck out her tongue and said, "You can't blame me for this. It was Chi Yu who insisted on bringing him here." Although Chi Yu's strength was not that great, he was not afraid of Hai Ryue. He fiercely looked at her full chest and said, "It was me who brought him here. This is my new disciple, so he can be considered one of us. I brought him here to pay my respects to the ancestor, right? I didn't come here to look for you." Although Hai Ryue hated Chi Yu's gaze, she was even more surprised by his words. "What did you say? He is your disciple?" It was no wonder that she was surprised. Just now, when she made eye contact with Jida, it was a process of testing each other. At their level of strength, their mental strength was very different from that of ordinary people. Their auras were condensed in their eyes, and although they did not actually fight, the contact of their auras was enough to roughly judge each other's strength. Hai Ryue felt Jida's strength, and she naturally knew what level Chi Yu was at. She could not believe that Chi Yu could actually accept such a disciple. "What? Can't I accept a disciple? Teacher Zhou, hello." As he spoke, Chi Yu greeted Uncle Zhou, who was beside him. Because Hai Ryue did not allow Uncle Zhou to teach Chi Yu martial arts, Uncle Zhou did not allow Chi Yu to call him master anymore. However, Chi Yu insisted on calling him Teacher Zhou to show his respect. His heart was full of goodwill towards this old man, and the purpose of today's visit was also to introduce Jida to his teacher Zhou. In fact, Chi Yu did not know how strong Uncle Zhou was, but he had always felt that Uncle Zhou was not an ordinary person. There was an extremely strong aura hidden in his body. Perhaps this was the strength brought about by martial arts, or perhaps this was another kind of strength. And this unfathomable feeling made Chi Yu full of confidence in him. Uncle Zhou smiled slightly, and his eyes swept over Chi Yu. His eyes were slightly dull for a moment, but they returned to normal in an instant. Hai Ryue said coldly, "It's good that you're here. Ming, Chi Yu, I happen to have something to talk to you about." Jida lowered his head and whispered in Chi Yu's ear, "Master, which one is the Grandmaster?" Chi Yu pointed at Uncle Zhou and said, "This one is." Jida glanced at Uncle Zhou and said, "Hello, Grandmaster." Chi Yu chuckled and said to Uncle Zhou, "Teacher Zhou, I've come to find trouble for you. This guy insisted on being my disciple, and he even wanted me to teach him unique skills. I had no choice but to bring him here. You know what my level is, how could I possibly teach him? He's a member of the Special Forces, and he's also Ming's brother, so he should be trustworthy. I remember you said you wanted to find a successor. I see that he's big, so he should be able to do it." Uncle Zhou looked kindly at Chi Yu and said with a smile, "You still remember." Jida said, "Grandmaster, I would like to spar with you." He was a straightforward person, and in his opinion, only those who could defeat him were qualified to be his master. Hai Ryue, who was at the side, said coldly, "This is not a dueling ground. Uncle Zhou, bring him to the training room. Chi Yu, Ming, you two come with me." After saying this, she turned around and went back to the villa. Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "Don't be offended. Miss has always been like this. She's actually a good person." Jida curled his lips and said, "I'm afraid this kind of woman won't be able to marry in the future. Whether she's a good person or not has nothing to do with me. Grandmaster, let's quickly find a place to spar." Uncle Zhou smiled indifferently and said, "There's no need to look for another place. Let's do it here. Chi Yu, you and Miss Ming go in first. I also want to try this disciple you found for me. If I'm not wrong, he should be an external martial artist, but later changed to internal martial arts. However, his martial arts are already fixed, so whether he can inherit my martial arts is another matter." Chi Yu looked at Jida and said, "Good luck." After saying this, he and Ming went back to the villa. Jida was born in the Special Forces and had always belonged to the destructive type of violent person. Seeing that everyone else had left, the expression on his face suddenly calmed down. If there were people familiar with him at this time, they would definitely know that this was the signal that he was about to make a move. In the Blue Dragon Special Forces, the calm Jida was called the Approaching Storm. Uncle Zhou smiled and looked at Jida, who was much taller than him. He spread his legs and stood there calmly. "Come, as long as you can make my legs move, you win." Jida was stunned. "Grandmaster, don't be too careless." Uncle Zhou's aura suddenly changed. With a calm smile on his face, he stretched out his right hand and slightly bent his arm. His body seemed to be swaying slightly, but it also seemed like he had never moved. At this moment, Jida suddenly felt a trace of strangeness in his heart. It seemed that Uncle Zhou had completely integrated with the surrounding environment. His heart trembled slightly. He knew that he had met a master. They had already set up their positions, while Chi Yu and Ming had also entered the villa. The two followed Hai Ryue to a reception room on the second floor. "Sister Ryue, don't be angry. However, you also know the purpose of us Zodiac Guardian warriors. Since we want to protect the East, we have to cooperate with the army." Ming looked at the cold face of Hai Ryue and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Before coming here, she had hesitated, but not only did Chi Yu's words made Jida very curious, She also wanted to see who Qi Yu was looking for to be her brother's master. Hai Ryue said indifferently, Ming Ming, I know your identity. However, there is one thing you need to understand. Although we want to cooperate with the country, do you think that we, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, are qualified? Our strength is far from enough. Master Zagru once said that. Before the Zodiac Guardian Warriors fully appear and possess their own abilities, we must try our best to hide ourselves. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors have been passed down for thousands of years. In order to protect the East, we have sacrificed a lot of blood. Similarly, we also have enemies lurking in the East. Once our identity is exposed, it is very likely that we will face a devastating blow. I know that you have a sense of propriety when doing things. However, I don't want others to know our identity, especially Qi Yu's identity. As the weakest Kirin, protecting him is your most important responsibility. Ming Ming lowered her head and said, Yes, Sister Ryue, I will definitely pay attention. Qi Yu sat on the sofa next to him and said, All right, stop lecturing Ming Ming. I brought her brother here. T-Rex, I also have something to tell you this time. Do you want to say it first or me? Hai Ryue was stunned and said, You have something to talk to me about? Her attitude towards Qi Yu had somewhat changed. Of course, it was not because Qi Yu's character had changed for the better, but because in just a few days, he had unexpectedly found 3 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. It was good luck and ability, which made Hai Ryue have a whole new level of respect for him. One must know that the sooner the Zodiac Guardian Warrior's strength was awakened, the sooner the strongest Eastern Guardian Warriors would have enough strength. Qi Yu nodded and glanced at Hai Ryue. He said, The reason why I want to talk to you is very simple. I remember that you have a company, right? I want you to give me a job. A part-time job is fine. You want to work? Hai Ryue thought that she had misheard. Qi Yu said firmly, Yes, I want a part-time job. I will do it when I don't go to school. The salary will be given according to my ability. It doesn't matter how much it is. However, the precondition is that I will provide meals when I work. This request is not too much, right? This time, Hai Ryue was really a little curious. Can you tell me why you want to work? Qi Yu said angrily, What else can a person need a job for? Of course it's for money. I have to support myself. Don't you know that I have been relying on the state's relief fund? Now I have to go to school. I have already owed you a lot of tuition fees. Don't you want to pay me back? I don't have the habit of spending women's money. I have hands and feet. Naturally I can work. Hai Ryue's eyes changed. There seemed to be something in her eyes, and there was a slight change in her expression. Although it was only for a moment, Qi Yu still noticed it. How about it, Director Hai? Will you give me a chance? Qi Yu asked eagerly. Hai Ryue looked at him and said, Then what can you do? As far as I know, you seem to be only at the level of junior high school. Qi Yu was suddenly speechless. I can at least serve the dishes. I just want to earn money for my meals. My requirements are not high. No matter what, I am the king of the Zodiac Guardian Gods now. I can't be a little gangster and rob money. Ming Ming's eyes widened. What? You have done this before? Qi Yu's face stiffened. He said awkwardly, I was just saying. Hai Ryue's eyes flashed a trace of a smile. Well, when you have winter vacation, I will arrange a job for you. You also have to pay me back the money you owe me. However, no matter what the job is, you must do it well. You won't be able to serve the dishes, but you have to work hard. Qi Yu smiled and said, Then I will thank you first. Now it's your turn. What do you want to say? Hai Ryue's face tightened. She said, This matter is very important. It is related to the status of the Zodiac Guardian Gods in the whole East. Yesterday I received a notice. 3 months later, on the 10th of January next year, the East Guardians will gather in Beijing and hold an exchange at Tianxiang Mountain. Qi Yu was stunned. He said, Tianxiang Mountain? I am familiar with it. It is only a 30-kilometer drive from where I live. It is one of the nearest mountains to the west of Beijing. What's so serious about holding an exchange? Hai Ryue sternly said, Do you think it is for fun? The exchange will be held at the highest peak of Tianxiang Mountain, Guijianqiu. It is called an exchange, but in fact it is a test of each other's strength. Don't think that the East Guardians are monolithic. There are many disputes among the major forces. The time when the Zodiac Guardian gods appear is not fixed. But every time we appear, we will become the leader of the East Guardians. This is something that the ancient forces can't stand. Every time we appear, they will think of ways to make things difficult for us. However, they also know that once the Zodiac Guardian gods are gathered, there is no power in the East that can contend against us. Therefore, they choose the right time to interfere when our Zodiac Guardian gods are not strong enough. Chiyu frowned and said, These fellows are sick. Are they not afraid that after they hit us, they will be destroyed by the ancient beasts? Hai Ryue indifferently said, Some people are very short-sighted. Moreover, they only want to suppress us and make us unable to raise our heads among the East Guardians. They don't really want to fight against us. After all, when the Zodiac Guardian gods become strong, no matter what the situation is, they will bear the responsibility of protecting the East. Chiyu curled his lips and said, It seems that this exchange is a fight for fame and fortune. Then let them have it. Won't it be fine if we don't go? Nonsense. Hai Ryue's voice suddenly became abnormally cold. A strong domineering aura spread out from her body. As the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods, how can you say such words? For us, although reputation is not the most important, if we lose it, then how can we command the entire East Guardians in the future? I've told you before that there's more than one powerful force in this world. If the East wants to be above all the other forces, then we must unite all the Eastern protectors. Otherwise, once the enemy invades, then our East will face an unimaginable disaster. Do you know why the East Guardians sent me an invitation? It is because of your appearance. Chapter 21. Hai Ryue looked at him coldly and said, Don't forget, you are the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods. Naturally you should be the leader of all the Eastern Guardians. Qilin was an ancient divine beast. When the bloodline in one's body was awakened, it would naturally emit the aura of an emperor. Ordinary people might not be able to feel this kind of energy fluctuation, but as the Eastern Guardians who had abilities far beyond ordinary people, they could clearly feel it. At the same time, they also know that Kirin is the weakest when he just appeared, and the Zodiac Guardian gods are not complete, so they will seize this opportunity. Ming Ming said, Sister Ryue, must Chiyu go? In 3 months' time, it was impossible for him to gain more strength. I think it's better for the 3 of us to go, you, Tiger, and me. It should be enough. Hai Ryue shook her head and said, Ming Ming, things are not as simple as you think. Those ancient families of the East that have settled down for God knows how many years, the strength they possess is very huge, and they are all independent systems. With just the 3 of us, we may not be able to gain the upper hand. Only God knows how strong those old fellows of the families are. Unfortunately, I just got close to the 6 clouds realm. If I have the strength of the 7 clouds, they will not dare to provoke me. Ming Ming said, Then what should we do? Do we really have to bring Chiyu? Hai Ryue glanced at Chiyu and said, As the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods, he must appear. Otherwise, it will seem that we are afraid of those people. In these 3 months we all have to work hard. It is impossible to rely on him. Only when the 3 of us increase our strength as much as possible, and when the time comes, can we deal with it. At this time, we don't need to defeat everyone. It is enough to show the strength of our Zodiac Guardian gods. When the 12 Zodiac Guardians gather, they will no longer have a chance. When Chiyu heard Hai Ryue's words, the muscles on his face couldn't help but twitch. A cold gaze flashed in his eyes. This was not the first time he had been looked down upon. However, being looked down upon by a woman still filled his heart with anger. However, Chiyu did not express it. He knew that everything that Hai Ryua said was true, at least from their point of view. According to Kirin's previous situation, he might not be able to become stronger in 3 years, let alone 3 months. In their eyes, his role was mainly to gather the 12 Zodiac warriors, not to fight. Since that's the case, then just wait and see. 3 months, which is close to 100 days, is it really impossible for me to have enough strength? Thinking of this, Chiyu unconsciously clenched his fists tightly. His heart was filled with the desire to become stronger. Ming Ming nodded and said, "That's the only way. Since the letter of challenge has arrived, we can't go to school anymore. How about this, Sister Ryua? Tomorrow I will look for the 3 newly discovered Zodiac guardian gods, and then immediately bring them to Tibet to ask Master Zagru to awaken them. Although 3 months is not a long time, they will at least have the strength of Chuyun. Sister Modi herself is very strong. Perhaps we will be a little stronger when the time comes. When we reach Master Zagru's place, we can also cultivate in peace for a period of time. We can only put our studies aside for now." Hai Ryua nodded and said, "I think so too. After receiving your call, I have already gathered the information of these people. I will go with you tomorrow. I will take care of the school." Although it was a simple sentence, it fully reflected the power that Hai Ryua possessed. Ming Ming's gaze fell on Chiyu. "What about you? Do you want to go with us? When you reach Master Zagru's place, you can also properly cultivate for a period of time." Chiyu shook his head and said, "No, you guys go. I will stay in Qingbei and wait for you guys to come back. In any case, I am only going to go through the motions and can't help you guys with anything. What's the use of bitter cultivation?" Hai Ryua looked at Chiyu with some disdain and said, "Do what you want. There is indeed no use for you to go and cultivate. However, there is another matter that I called you guys over today. There are a few things that I want to give you. Although you won't be able to achieve anything in 3 months, if you can use these things well, you can at least protect your life." Chiyu was stunned and said, "What things?" Hai Ryua didn't reply and walked in front of a wall. She raised her hand and lightly pressed on the wallpaper on the wall. With a cha-cha sound, the wall actually naturally split open to the 2 sides, revealing a gap that was big enough for a person to pass through. Not only was Chiyu surprised, even Ji Ming Ming also asked curiously, "Big Sister Ryua, you still have a mechanism here?" Hai Ryua said indifferently, "This is something that Master Zagru gave to me for safekeeping. Originally we shouldn't give it to him now, but this matter happened suddenly. If we don't give him some ability to protect his life, we won't be able to take responsibility if an accident happens. Come with me." Saying that, she took the lead and walked into the gap. The 3 of them walked in along the gap, and the wall behind them naturally closed up. This was an independent room. Hai Ryua did not know where she pressed, but a layer of faint brilliance suddenly appeared on the wall of the room, illuminating every corner of the room. Chiyu suddenly felt an indescribable aura, that incomparably strong feeling stimulated his body to slightly tremble. Immediately after, that aura seemed to have found a relative, and frantically rushed towards his body. Chiyu could not help but let out a muffled groan, his body slightly swayed, and he took a step back. The aura that he had just started cultivating today naturally circulated, and quickly accepted the stimulation of this aura. Chiyu could clearly feel that every cell in his body seemed to be active, and the speed of the aura circulating in his body was at least 3 times faster than when he cultivated today. Hai Ryua's voice sounded, "This secret room is built with special materials, and can isolate all energy fluctuations. Chiyu, you can pick up what belongs to you. If you can't take it away, then it proves that it still doesn't recognize you." Chiyu did not seem to hear Hai Ryua's words. His gaze was already fixed on a metal table at the innermost wall of the room. On that table there were 3 things. On the left there was a tray, and on it was a piece of clothing. The fabric seemed to be very ordinary, and one could not tell what it looked like. On the right there seemed to be a glass ball, and there was a faint brilliance circulating within the ball. Every time it flickered, it would change into a different color, going through the alternation of purple, blue, red, and green colors. That powerful aura from before came from this ball of light. And in the middle of the table there was a piece of scale. The bright red scale was diamond-shaped, and there were slight bumps on it. The red color was like a drop of blood, and it flashed with a somewhat demonic light. The faint red light made the atmosphere of the room seem a little strange. Ming Ming and Hai Ryue moved to the sides, and Chi Yu walked step by step to the front of the table and stopped. He raised his hand, as if he wanted to grab one of the things, but his hand stopped in mid-air. Hai Ryue, what are these? His voice was strangely calm. Whether it was Hai Ryue or Ming Ming, there was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Hai Ryue said indifferently, "These 3 things are the treasures of Kirin that have been passed down. Originally, there were a total of 8, but with the hardships that Kirin has experienced in the past, now there are only 3 left. If you can find all 8 treasures of Kirin, maybe you can really have the power of Kirin." Chi Yu's heart trembled a little. He could feel very clearly that the 3 things in front of him had an aura that was closely related to him. It was abnormally real. Compared to when he first saw Xieji, this aura was much more intimate. It was as if they were a part of his body. "It's them, it's actually them." Xieji, who should have been sleeping, exclaimed in Chi Yu's heart. "What is it?" Chi Yu asked in his heart. Xieji said a little hurriedly, "This is Kirin's 8 treasures. Ah, I understand. I finally understand why Kirin chose to pass on his bloodline through humans even though he knew that humans could not inherit the true cultivation method of Kirin's bloodline." "Is it because of the 8 treasures of Kirin?" Chi Yu asked doubtfully. "Yes, it is because of these 8 treasures of Kirin. The 8 treasures of Kirin's 8 treasures are not other things. They are actually a part of Kirin itself. These 8 treasures were transformed by the 8 ancient Kirin before they died, using the last of their body's energy to create them. They were the condensation of all their efforts. Although it couldn't preserve the energy they possessed, each treasure had its own unique function according to the Qilin's different abilities. Just like what the heir of the dragon said, if the 8 treasures of Kirin's 8 treasures were obtained by an heir of Kirin, then, under the guidance of the 8 treasures of Kirin, he could unlock the mystery of his bloodline. This is the method of using Kirin's ability and integrating the bloodline that you saw today. Chi Yu frowned and said, "So, this Kirin's 8 treasures are useless to me? Can't I already learn the real cultivation method?" Xieji said angrily, "Of course not. Each of the 8 treasures of Kirin has an extremely powerful effect. However, they can only really play their role in the hands of Kirin. When you learned the application of Kirin's ability today, did you find any flaws in it?" Chi Yu was stunned and said, "How could I find it? I just looked at it once. It is already very good to remember a part of it. Even if there are flaws, I can only find them through cultivation. However, when I looked at it carefully today, I found that there was a big shadow at the end of the cultivation method. At that time, I thought that the application of Kirin's ability had ended, but the shadow took a long time to disappear. Now that I think about it, it may be the flaw that you mentioned." Xieji said, "That's right. Those shadow parts are likely to contain the most powerful skills of Kirin. If you want to learn these skills, you must use the 8 treasures of Kirin to activate them. If you can have the 8 treasures of Kirin, then you are no longer the heir of Kirin, but a real Kirin. At that time, the bloodline in your body will be fully awakened. Rather than saying that you have the ability of Kirin, it is better to say that Kirin has the transformation of a human. With the 8 treasures of Kirin, you no longer need to be restricted by the 3 reading limit that I mentioned. You can study the application of Kirin's ability more carefully, and you can also see the last few great skills." "Damn, do you need to be so troublesome?" Chi Yu couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. Xieji sighed and said, "You also have to understand this point, the ancestors of Kirin. You have to understand that the cultivation method of Kirin is the most superior method in ancient times. You have also seen that the Zodiac Guardian God warriors can quickly improve their strength by evolving the Ascending Cloud method according to the Ascending Qilin method. If they have all the cultivation methods of Kirin, they will inevitably become more powerful. This was not limited to them. Once one obtained all of the Qilin's cultivation methods, any cultivator would be able to possess super strength in a short period of time. Therefore, the ancestors of Kirin have to be on guard. Qiyu nodded and said, "Then tell me what these three things do now. Didn't you say that they all have very powerful characteristics?" Xieji said, "Yes, each of the 8 treasures of Kirin is very powerful, but only when all 8 are gathered together can they fully release their power. And if there are only 3, they can only release about 30% of their power at most. The 3 Kirin's 8 treasures in front of you are also not bad. One of them is the most important red armor of Kirin. It is the scale in the middle. This scale was transformed from the most powerful fire Kirin in the history of Kirin. It has the ability to trigger the heavenly fire of Kirin. Moreover, there are many mysteries. I am not very clear about the specific details, you have to explore it yourself. However, I can be sure that this red scale has a protective ability. When you inject your own thundercloud force into it, it can increase 10 times into a set of energy armor to protect your body. Of course, I am referring to the situation where you are below the 3 clouds. When you reach the 3 clouds and above, the Kirin armor that it transforms can only be combined with your own ability. The stronger your thundercloud force, the stronger its defense. Moreover, your thundercloud force is also related to the time it can be supported. If you can reach the same strength as the predecessor of the Fire Kirin, then you can have the ability to use the red armor of Kirin forever. This red armor of Kirin has another name, called Kirin Red. It is the one with the highest defense among the 8 treasures of Kirin. Qiyu was overjoyed and said, "If I have it, won't I become a cockroach?" Xieji was stunned and said, "What is a cockroach?" Qiyu smiled and said, "Isn't it a cockroach? Don't tell me you don't know this creature." Xieji said, "Of course I know. Cockroaches are one of the most ancient species that have been passed down since ancient times. Although they are not powerful, they have appeared much earlier than us, the ancient divine beasts. Even now, they have been passed down for a long time. They have an extremely strong life force. It is also appropriate for you to use it as an analogy. However, there is one thing I want to remind you. With your current meager strength, you can only use the red armor of Kirin for 3 seconds at most." "What? Only 3 seconds? You are not wrong, right?" When Qiyu heard this, his state of excitement suddenly turned into disappointment. Xieji laughed and said, "Do you think that the 10 times defense is given to you for free? Although that is the energy of the red armor of Kirin, it also depends on your own ability. You must at least have the ability to mobilize the energy of the red armor of Kirin to use its defense. In your current situation, I am overestimating you if I say that you can hold on for 3 seconds. However, don't underestimate these 3 seconds. In a life and death situation, sometimes every second is very important. Think about it, if someone used an arrow to shoot you, how long would it take from the shot to the target? At least at that moment, the red armor of Kirin can help you resist the enemy's attack. Isn't this a treasure? What's more, there are many other mysteries in the red armor of Kirin. It is up to you to uncover it yourself." Qiyu said, "What about the other 2? What abilities do they have?" Xieji said, "The ball on the right is the only treasure in the 8 treasures of Kirin that has neither defensive nor offensive power. But you must not underestimate it. In the 8 treasures of Kirin, it is ranked 4th and is called the Kirin Pearl. Although it can't attack or defend, it is a treasure to assist in cultivation. This was transformed by the weakest Kirin of the 4 clouds, Kirin. In this regard, it is the same as you, but he is not as lucky as you. You are the 4 clouds in Kirin, but he is only the 4 clouds Kirin. There is a little difference, but the difference is huge. Although he also has 4 abilities, he does not have a naturally tyrannical body like you. At that time, if he was given a year, maybe he would really become the strongest Kirin in history. Once he cultivated all 4 of his abilities to the extreme, no creature would be able to match up to him. Unfortunately, the enemies would not give him this opportunity. Although the 4 clouds Kirin could become stronger, because his mind was divided into 4 parts, it was the most difficult to cultivate. In order to limit its growth, there was a holy war between the giant beasts. In the end, although the godly beasts defeated the beasts, it was a pity that the 4-cloud Qilin had no choice but to use the ultimate Qilin arm at the most critical moment, instantly killing the 2 strongest beasts on the other side and paying with its life. Before he died, he transformed into the Kirin Pearl. At that time, no one understood the function of the Kirin Pearl. It was not until a long time later, when an ordinary Kirin accidentally obtained the Kirin Pearl and used it to obtain all of Kirin's abilities in a short 300 years, that the giant beasts understood that the Kirin Pearl could assist in cultivation. Because the sacrificed Qilin Senior was a 4-cloud Qilin, this Qilin Pearl would be able to assist the Qilin's cultivation regardless of the attribute of the Qilin. Its appearance also made the Kirin clan's position as the king of the mythological beasts more secure. It is also because of it that Kirin's ability improved and became even more abnormal. Therefore, although the Kirin Pearl's ranking is lower than Kirin's, it will be very useful to you. This time, Qiyu did not feel any joy because of the Qilin bead. Instead, a trace of sorrow suddenly rose in his heart as he looked at the treasure flickering with 4 different colors. He seemed to have seen the 4 clouds Kirin and felt the indignant expression on his face before he died. Yes, as the 4 clouds Kirin, he was regarded as trash by Master Zagru and the Zodiac warriors. Back then, didn't he also suffer a tragedy because of the difficulties in cultivation? Because of this, he used the last of his life force to condense this Kirin Pearl. He sacrificed himself to bring opportunities to his clansmen. Senior, don't worry. No matter what, I will use it well. I will never let the 4 clouds Kirin be humiliated because of the difficulties in cultivation. Perhaps it sensed Qiyu's state of mind. The Kirin Pearl's flickering luster suddenly lit up. Although it was only for a moment, Qiyu clearly felt a pure and intimate feeling, as if it was caring for him. The faint sadness also disappeared. Qiyu, do you know? In history, you are the second 4 clouds Kirin to appear. The senior who condensed this Kirin Pearl is the first. This your heavenly guide doesn't know. After all, it has been too long. As the king of the Xieji clan, I have lived for more than 3,000 years. I already have a strong ability. Originally, I didn't want to become the shadow of a Kirin. Although you are the king of Kirin, you are still too weak. Even if I want to become your shadow, I hope to wait until you are stronger before I consider it. However, when I know that you are a 4 clouds Kirin, and at the same time, a unique 4 clouds ink Kirin, I no longer have the slightest hesitation. I hope that I can work with you, the unprecedented 4-cloud ink Qilin, to create a brand new situation. The strong always hope to rely on stronger people. Although you are not strong enough now. However, your potential is something that no one can compare to. Qiyu, with this Kirin Pearl, can I increase the speed of my cultivation of the ascending Qilin technique? Xieji said. Of course, the Kirin Pearl has many benefits because it has the 4 attributes of the senior. After the 4 kinds of energy condense, a special space is formed inside the Kirin Pearl. Although this space is not very big, it is no different from the natural environment outside. As long as you can communicate with the Kirin Pearl, you can use this space and store your own things inside. Because it has the natural environment inside, there is no problem even if you store living things. As for the size of this space, it depends on how powerful your thundercloud force is. Perhaps the space formed by this Kirin Pearl is infinite. As for cultivation, you only need to wear it on your body, and the energy of the Kirin pearl will naturally help you. These are what I heard from the ancestors of Xieji. I am not sure whether this is the case or not. Chiyu, I understand. The magical effect of this Kirin octatic treasures mainly depends on my own ability. The stronger my ability, the greater the effect they can play. What's that dress? Xieji said. That is not a piece of clothes, but a cloak. In ancient times, because the sun was much stronger than now, most humans at that time would wear a cloak. Therefore, one of the octatic treasures named Kirin Hidden was made to suit the humans at that time. Kirin Hidden? This name sounds a bit strange. What is its ranking in the Kirin octatic treasures? As he said this, Chiyu's eyes couldn't help but fall on the dark red cloak. Xieji said, in the Kirin octatic treasures, Kirin Hidden ranks 8th, which is the last treasure. Although its ranking is the lowest, you must not underestimate it. But don't underestimate it. For you, the Qilin concealment is very useful. In the Kirin octatic treasures, except for the Kirin bead, the other 7 are mostly related to attack and defense. And this Qilin concealment is one of them. After the introduction of Xieji, Qiyu had already understood a little about the Kirin octatic treasures. He quickly said, in that case, Kirin Hidden is dark red. It should be left by a fire Kirin predecessor. Xieji paused. After a long while, it let out a low sigh. No, it is not. The reason why this Kirin Hidden is precious and can be one of the octatic treasures is that it came from a ink Kirin predecessor. Qiyu was stunned. Ink Kirin? Is it the fire attribute Ink Kirin? Xieji said. No, according to the information passed down by my ancestors, Ink Kirin's attribute is thunder, not fire. The reason why this Kirin Hidden is dark red is not because of its attribute. Qilins had scales on their bodies, and golden and silver fur grew out of the scales, while the Ink Qilin's fur was black. This Qilin concealment is not a scale armor. It looks like it's made of cloth. In fact, it was completed by the Black Qilin Senior using his own skin to condense the last bit of his strength before he died. At this point, Xieji's voice was full of sorrow. As a follower of Kirin, Xieji's feelings for Ink Kirin were naturally the deepest. Qiyu did not ask any questions this time because he felt the sadness in Xieji's heart. He just quietly waited for him to continue. The Ink Kirin predecessor was once a sinner of the Kirin clan. It was because of him that the Kirin clan was almost destroyed. Although Kirin was strong, every Kirin had a fatal weakness. Furthermore, every Qilin's weaknesses were very well hidden. Some of them were in their defense, some in their attacks, and some in their personalities. Kirin's weakness was the most precious secret of every Kirin, and it was difficult for even their companions to know. The Ink Kirin predecessor was the most favored of all 7 Kirin, because the other 6 Kirin were his parents, grandfather, grandmother, and 2 uncles. He could be said to be the pride of the entire Kirin clan. Therefore, the most precious secret of Kirin was not a secret to him at all. He was worthy of being the pride of everyone. In just a short span of 450 years, he became the strongest of the Kirin clan. However, he later made a mistake that affected the entire Kirin clan. It was also because of him that the number of Kirin clan, which had always been maintained at 7 to 10, could never exceed 3. Chiyu's heart trembled. Did he betray the Kirin clan and seek refuge with the beasts? No, the Kirin clan is not only the king of the divine beasts, but also the most arrogant giant beasts. They are the most upright clan among the ancient divine beasts. However, do you remember that I told you that the Kirin clan is a playboy? The mistake that Senior Ink Qilin had committed had been made by women. He was actually unable to extricate himself from falling in love with a female beast. It had to be said that this beast, who was about the same age as Senior Black Qilin, was indeed the most outstanding of the primordial beasts, the 9-tailed fox clan. Her beauty and charm were incomparable to any other divine beast. Senior Ink Kirin had been cultivating and knew very little about the outside world. Therefore, when he found out the true identity of the nine-tailed fox, it was already too late. Xie Zhi did not continue, but Qi Yu had already fully understood. The nine-tailed fox betrayed Ink Kirin and told the ancient beasts about the weaknesses of all 7 Kirin clans Kirin, causing the Kirin clan to suffer a devastating blow. It was also for this reason that Senior Ink Kirin became the sinner of the Kirin clan. Qi Yu thought about it and opened up his thoughts to Xie Zhi. Your judgment is basically correct, but you have overlooked one point. As the most beloved of the Kirin kings, Ink Kirin was also an outstanding talent among the divine beasts. Whether it was in appearance or strength, he was a rare talent among the divine beasts. Although the nine-tailed fox betrayed him and caused the Kirin clan to suffer a huge blow, the nine-tailed fox also fell deeply in love with Senior Ink Kirin. It was precisely because of this that this tragedy occurred and caused the emergence of Kirin-in. Qi Yu was a little at a loss. Looking at the dark red Kirin-in, it was as if there was a long river of blood rushing past his eyes. Xie Zhi continued, when Senior Ink Kirin realized that he had been deceived, the ancient beasts had already gathered all their forces to launch a sneak attack on the Kirin clan. At that time, Ink Kirin's grandfather, grandmother, and parents were all destroyed by the ancient beasts at the cost of several 10,000-year-old beasts. Even Ink Kirin's father was the only one who had time to release the essence of his life, Kirin's arm. As for the other 3 Qilin ancestors, they died in vain. At that time, Senior Ink Kirin almost fell into madness. He loved the nine-tailed fox so much that he was really unwilling to believe that all this was true. However, the facts were right in front of him and he had to admit all this. In the face of the doubts of all the divine beasts and the tragic death of his loved ones, his spirit almost collapsed. In order to avenge his loved ones and to find out the truth of everything, he led the divine beast army to the nest of the beast. Finally, after killing countless beasts, he finally saw his beloved nine-tailed fox. At that time, the nine-tailed fox cried. She only begged Senior Ink Kirin to kill him. It was also at that time that the nine-tailed fox revealed her true feelings. After listening to the nine-tailed fox's words, Senior Ink Kirin's originally black eyes turned blood-red. Although his heart was in a mess and his spirit had completely collapsed, he actually calmed down at that moment. Then, he released his Kirin's arm without hesitation towards the 3 strongest ancient beasts at that time. In other words, he released all the essence of his life.